All right, so welcome, guys. Hey, it's Eric Roberts. I'm with the Paducah Portsmouth Board. I'll be facilitating today's day 2 of the National SSAB Chairs Meeting, and we're glad to have you with us. Hope yesterday was good. We went a little long, but that was worthwhile. It was a really good discussion at the end, and personally, I think the boards are best when we're talking about something that everyone has an opinion on and they feel like they want to share, and that's really great when we get into those venues and those subject areas where everyone wants to express themselves, and that's typically means we're in a healthy spot and we're going in the right direction. Let's take a look at a couple things this morning as we get ready to get rolling. One, you're going to notice that behind me, I have changed my locations. I am now a little farther downriver. This is the Shoshone Falls and Snake River in Idaho. It is the Niagara of the West, a 220-foot drop in elevation as the waterfall swings off. They say it's the Niagara of the West, but I have yet to find a Dave and Buster's or a Fuddruckers or anything from the Niagara Falls in New York. So I'm not sure they're equivalent. This looks way more pleasant. So we're really excited about that. All right, so today's agenda. Jordan, you have it for us?
Can you see that? You're on mute, Eric.
Oh, good. Now can you see me?
Yes,
right.
I can see you. Can you see this? My screen?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, awesome.
All
right, here we go.
All right, so let's take a look at the agenda. And one big change to what we're going to look at today. So sometimes you guys know that life happens, right? And the world kind of falls apart and things beyond our control. And that is where we are right now with the presentation on the EM Office of Technology Development and Overview. So that is not going to happen today due to reasons that beyond me, right? And so that's actually not an awful thing. We're going to move that presentation forward to the spring, hopefully in person in Paducah. That's our plan. If not, it will be virtual, hosted by Paducah. But what we're going to do is take that half hour and be able to add it to our group discussion on recommendations and board business. So after the lengthy time we spent talking yesterday, having extra time to discuss is going to be beneficial. So that is the big change on today's agenda. We do have a couple of charges we want to get to, the recommendations from Charge 1 and Charge 2. We have the recommendation from the Savannah River site. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read it either last night or early this morning like Fran Johnson did. And then I know we've got another couple of small pieces of business we want to address that folks have told me about. So we'll get to that in our board business section. Okay. So we started yesterday, before we roll over to our first presentation, we finished yesterday with Greg Murray from Savannah River, and they brought forth a recommendation on membership, and we had planned on him to kind of introduce it at the end of yesterday's discussion, but we ran a little long, and Greg benevolently allowed us to slide over. So we're going to start and give him a few minutes this morning. He's going to do just a short, brief introduction to his recommendation, and then we start our recommendation discussion. We're going to come back and open to a more full discussion on it, but we kind of wanted Greg to introduce this, and that allows you guys to start thinking along the lines that he's thinking, and maybe during our breakouts or independent offline sessions, you can, carry on your discussion with this. So Greg, are you there, buddy?
I am, sir. Thank you, Eric, and good morning. I guess afternoon for me, but I'll say good morning to the folks out west. So greetings, everyone. Thank you for your indulgence of my brief introduction to the SSAB recommendation regarding the membership process. You can relax. I'm not going to use this time to criticize or complain. To the contrary, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to introduce something that I believe may offer some hope for a path through a complicated process that we have little to no control over, that may also take some pressure off the system using a mechanism that's already in place in some circumstances. So advisory board colleagues, I offer to you for your consideration today SSAB recommendation 370 entitled Revise the Membership Appointment Process. This recommendation was unanimously adopted June 26, 2021. The recommendation includes 3 parts. Part 1 formally defines lapsed memberships. So, and we define that as a member with an expired term who has not reached the 6-year limit. And it sends the message that the appointment process should take all reasonable steps to avoid them. That's the broad guiding statement of intent. Part 2, we believe, provides a temporary solution for when lapsed memberships aren't avoided. It says site members should be given the power to extend the terms of lapsed members until new members can be formally appointed, when losing that number of lapsed members would drop membership below 75%. Further, it says that if board membership is still below 75% after extending the terms of lapsed members, site managers should be given the power to appoint temporary members to get membership up to 75%. This provides a mechanism for keeping us at credible levels of membership. And it also is a mechanism that or a power that site managers already have. Part 3 says that DOE should publish the appointment process and take feedback from the public and SSAB on it. And that is, it promotes transparency. So DOE Savannah River partially accepted this recommendation as we expected. That is, it accepted Part 1 regarding taking reasonable steps to avoid lapsed memberships. Regarding Part 2, it said Part 2 is outside DOE authority and was transmitted for consideration to the DFO for this group. Now, I take this as a statement that this advisory board is the proper venue for this recommendation. And again, I should note that the site managers have the power to appoint in certain circumstances. Regarding Part 3, it said the recommendation had been forwarded to DFO for consideration, and for my part at least, I believe Kelly Snyder's presentation yesterday at least partially addressed this, this part of the recommendation. Thank you, Kelly. Now, I don't want to take much more of your time at this point, but I will conclude by saying that we heard yesterday, and we've heard before, some of the problems and disruptions that the current process creates. From what Kelly said yesterday, I don't believe she or her DOE colleagues are satisfied with the appointment process. And from what several of you said yesterday, I don't believe most of you are satisfied with the appointment process either. Site managers already have the power to appoint members under certain circumstances, and this recommendation simply extends that power to address lapsed memberships, and more importantly, to address, if not prevent the problems and disruptions they create. So thank you for your time and attention, and I turn my time back over.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate you helping to put that in context and explain where you're coming from. And I hope that all of you can give their recommendation some consideration and thought as we prepare to have discussion on that later on in the day. All right, so we're going to slide forward on our agenda at this point. But before we introduce our first speaker, I wanted to make sure that anyone watching at home or those of you playing along on Zoom know who's at the table, right? So let's take just a brief second and reintroduce all the fine folks representing your boards across the country. So from the Hanford board, we have Shelly Simone and Jeff Burright. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
At our lovely host site, we have the Idaho Cleanup Project Citizens Advisory Board, Terry and Josh. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Oh, fantastic. The Nevada Site Specific Advisory Board, Frank and Anthony. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Our 2 tank boys there. I like it. Northern New Mexico Citizens Advisory Board, we have Sherilyn and Elena. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, there you are, Cheryl. Good, good. The Oak Ridge SSAB should be Shell and Leon. Shell, are you with us?
Good morning.
Good morning. Leon, are you there, sir? Not seeing Leon as of yet. Maybe he'll jump on in just a second. And then for Paducah, we have Don Barger and Fran Johnson. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. In Portsmouth, we have Bob and Carlton. Bob Berry and Carlton Cave. Good morning, fellas.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Perfect. And we have heard from Savannah River and Greg Murray. Greg, thanks.
Good morning, folks, again.
All right. Okay, so actually our only formal presentation from DOE this morning is the one that we all love to hear, and that's the budget presentation with little Steve Trishman. Good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Hey, for those of you that don't know Steve is not having a meeting in person. Not having Steve with us is a real, it's a loss, right? Not only does he bring this really great budget information, he's so easy to talk to and answers all our questions, but is truly one of the great dinner guests in all of DOE. So if you ever get the chance and we're all together, go out with Steve and enjoy his, truly one of my favorite people to hang out with, and it's outstanding. Hey, just so you guys know, Steve Trishman is the Director for Budget and Planning. It's the Office EM-5.11 for the Office of Environmental Management. He has served in this role since January of 2017, providing leadership and development, mission strategies, policy, and guidance for planning and executing EM's $7 billion annual program. Prior to joining DOE, Steve served as a program manager at the Department of Navy for the modernization and nuclear refueling of U.S. aircraft carriers. He began his career in the private sector working for a shipyard supervising the installation of shipyard fire suppression systems on several Navy ships. He has a Master's of Engineering Administration and a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Virginia Polytech Institute. And his wife, 2 kids. Great man. You can't. All right. Bringing good news of wealth beyond measure or something like that. Steve Trishman.
Wow, that was I think the best introduction of me I've ever heard. That was really good. Thanks. And I do miss meeting in person. I think it's just a lot easier because you can see people and make eye contact and ask questions, and it's a lot more interactive than when we're doing this remotely. But we'll press on. So let's go on to the next slide. So this is the budget timeline, which we share with you. Just to put things into context. So we're always working on a couple budget years at any one time. So if you looked at, we're in October, so right now, the very FY24 would be the group that we are, or the year that we're starting to do planning on. So our sites are looking at planning in the January timeframe. We'll start doing workshops to pull together information, and then OMB will give us guidance. So the 24 process hasn't really kicked off yet, but it'll be sort of the next opportunity to make a major influence, on the planning side of things. The OMB agency formulation phase, that's what we're in right now with FY23. So we submitted our budget to OMB in September. We're working with OMB right now to answer questions about the budget, and we'll get our pass back sometime in November, which is a very short period of time. And then that budget goes out in February. And then if you look at the congressional formulation phase, they're looking at the budget, the 22 budget right now. They've both House and Senate have issued their proposed budgets, and then they need to conference on that. And since they weren't able to do that before the end of the fiscal year, they issued a CR, which will take us, a continuing resolution, which will take us into through December 3rd of this year until they come up with the final numbers for the budget. And that's fairly normal that we have a CR. It does create a few problems for us, but in general, we have workarounds for those. That's the overall budget process. Let's look at the next slide just for some of the details. So our 22 budget request was 7.6 billion, and if you're keeping track of things, that's a very strong budget request from any administration. Actually, if you go back and look at the whole history of the program, that's probably numerically the highest budget that we've ever asked for EM. And that's in line with what Congress has been enacting. So this will help us sort of bring together planning, long-term planning. If Congress continues to support us at this level and the administration supports us at this level, it makes it a lot easier for us to plan because we know we're going to be executing this amount of work versus, let's say if we were asking for $6 billion and the Congress is giving us $7.5 billion, you've got that $1.5 billion difference that you have to try to plan for. So this will make it a little bit more consistent, which I think is good. And looking at the House and Senate marks, they're fairly consistent too, which is good. Both House and Senate seem to be providing very good support. And looking at the 23 request, like I said, we submitted that to OMB. We're working on that right now with the Hill. With OMB specifically. That'll go to the Hill in February, and then we can start sharing that. So at the spring workshop, we'll be talking about. Well, next time we meet with you, we'll talk about the 23. All right, the next slide. This just gives you a little this historic perspective on the program and where we were as far as requests versus enacted. Like I said, if you look at, go back a couple of years, and you might have to scroll down to well, I guess that doesn't, it has years on the very bottom of the slide, but yeah, so in 17, we were asking for about $6 billion and getting about $6 billion. Now, we're going to be, if we're asking for 7.5 and getting 7.5 will be, in lockstep. That, like I said, is very helpful because when you look at like a budget request of $6 billion and an enacted of $7 billion, we have to contract for this work. Our contractors have to staff up for this work. And if they're not sure they're going to get that funding every year, it's very difficult and very difficult on communities if you lay people off, if you ramp up and then have to let people go. So over this ramp-up period over the last couple of years, our contractors, in some cases, have been able to be very responsive and bring people on board, especially if it's subcontractors and it's work that's more short-term focused. But it's hard on bigger operations and nuclear facility operations and things like that. If you spend, 2 or 3 years training people, you do not want to let them go. It's just too expensive to start back up. So just thinking about, turning a $7 billion program, it's one of those things where we just need, the consistency is very helpful for us as far as on the execution side. All right, going on to next slide is our 22 budget requests reflected as a dollar bill chart, just as a area chart. But you can see from that sort of where the money actually goes to. And by percentage, tank waste is the largest and most expensive part of the program. And that's the biggest piece of our environmental liability as far as cleanup goes, and where we've been making significant investments as far as building, facilities like at Hanford, building the low activity waste treatment facility, Savannah River, the salt waste processing facility, which is now up and running, at Idaho, the IWTU, integrated tank waste treatment unit there. And so it's having each of those operational, which is our goal in the next couple of years, will make a big difference on the tank waste mission. But we also spend a lot of money on true waste and operation of WIP and getting waste shipped from the various sites that have it, and are still recovering full capacity at WIP. When you look at the number of shipments per week that we'd like to do, we still have some more work to do on the ventilation system and the new utility shaft there. And once those are complete, we'll be operating at a higher capacity. As far as facility D&D, another big area of budget. A lot of that's at Portsmouth, where we're in the process of tearing down the first big gas diffusion plant building. And then some, you see that that includes all the funding we're spending also on cleanup at sites like ETTP, Paducah, some of the cleanup work at Hanford, as far as facility D&D work there, and even some of the small sites like West Valley. Then we have soil and groundwater, which is just the cleanup of the soils and groundwater operations. Site services, which includes the safeguards and security, other infrastructure costs and operations. And then I left out spent nuclear fuel, special nuclear materials. We have a lot of that, operations at Savannah River, like the H Canyon operations there, as well as our fuel storage and operations that go on in Idaho and some of our other sites. Okay, jumping on to the next slide. So this shows you the request or the enacted budget and our request by site, and then the House and Senate marks. So just looking at this is just helpful for us to look at, and probably when you look at it, if you have any interaction with the congressional staff or for your delegations, you can see where there's sometimes stronger support or at a particular site, you can see which committee is driving that. And I think that's helpful, when you're at least when we're briefing them, to know which sites are the priorities and which ones we should focus on when we talk to them. But you can see that the House and Senate marks are right in between either the request or similar to the enacted of the prior year. I think Savannah River is the one exception, because we did bring on SWPF, and we are going to be operating tankways at a higher operational rate there than we have in the past. So both, we are seeing a little bit of an increase on that one. The other thing I was going to point out, I think it's, if you look at the offsets, so down below the line, this has to do with our defense contribution to the uranium enrichment D&D fund. So for the 3 sites that had the gas diffusion plants, Oak Ridge, ETTP, Portsmouth, and Paducah, that UED&D account, which is all the cleanup work of those large buildings at those sites, was actually paid for out of this defense UED&D fund. That was fund was set up so that the commercial nuclear power industry could make contributions to it, and DOE would make contributions to it, put money in a fund so that when these buildings were ready to be demolished, we could pay for that out of that fund. That fund now has been, as of 21, has been depleted. So we are now increasing the request to provide additional funding so that money will go into the fund, but then it'll be drawn back out for the appropriation. So it just keeps things balanced. And for the 1 year in 22, we asked for half of the money to be funded out of defense, the other half to come out of another fund that Congress had set up called the United States Enrichment Corporation Fund, USEC Fund. That was also is being used to help pay for some of the cleanup. So that's why you see those numbers at the bottom changing. But it's if you looked back several years ago, we always had a defense contribution to the fund, but now we're going to be doing that going forward until the last site, which would be Paducah, is cleaned up, because we'll need to have that offset every year to pay for it. So it puts a little bit more pressure on the defense account, but that's the only way that cleanup can be completed. I could pause here just to see if there's any questions. If not, I will move on to slide 7.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and finish up your presentation, then we'll take questions at the end, Steve.
Okay, I'm almost,
yeah,
I'm almost
Perfect.
done anyways. So this kind of highlights what our accomplishments are with this 22 budget. So we are, we've completed construction of the direct feed low activity waste facilities. So now we're in the process of commissioning those facilities, and there's a lot of work going on to get those up and running and ready to start. The goal of commissioning in December of 2023, I think is the milestone. And this involves preparing tank waste to be fed into this. It's all the tank waste. Since this is the low activity waste side, this is all the contact handled waste. So the tank waste has to be treated before it comes there. As you may know, we have the pretreatment facility has been placed on hold while we resolve some technical issues. So we've gone forward with a interim solution for low activity waste pretreatment, which is using these tank side cesium removal units. They're TISCR units. They're ion exchange columns, similar to what they've been using at Fukushima to treat the water there. And so this is going to be a way we can get started on this plant by pre-treating the tank waste and having it ready to feed. So that's been initiated as well. And then also at Hanford, one of the main things we know that's a priority for the community is to remediate under the 324 building. There's a waste site there from a past leak, and the idea is to go inside that building. There's a hot cell facility, which is where the leak occurred, to use that hot cell facility to actually break through the floor of the building and remediate the waste from inside the building. And then we've also been working to relocate the cesium and strontium capsules, which were removed. The cesium and strontium was removed from the tanks years ago and placed into these capsules. That's the higher, short half-life, but high activity cesium and strontium that's in these capsules. Those are currently stored in the waste encapsulation storage facility in water. But the idea is to move those to dry storage. So this project will allow us to continue modifying that waste encapsulation storage facility to allow retrieval of the capsules, and then we're also building a storage pad for the dry cask storage. In Idaho, as I mentioned, the integrated waste treatment unit, we'll be starting that in 22. We've had several tests and outages to prove that facility is ready to go. So we'll be entering the last test and then start up in the 22 is our plan. At Savannah River, the salt waste processing facility that was built to really do the separation of the remaining tank waste at at Savannah River, so that we can, take the high level fraction and to GWPF and make glass, and then the low activity side gets turned into saltstone and disposed of in the saltstone disposal units there. So this facility started and is, currently ramping up operations. So our goal is to be able to hit about 6 million gallons a year, and then eventually operate up to 9 million gallons a year, which would allow us to complete the tank treatment mission in really early in the next decade, which would be a huge accomplishment. As you know, the tank waste mission is challenging and difficult. So this is exciting to see this facility operating. At WIP, and I'd mentioned we are working on infrastructure improvements. That's the additional air ventilation system through the confinement ventilation system, safety significant confinement ventilation system, and also the new utility shaft there. This will allow us to operate at a higher rate because we'll have more airflow in the facility that allows us to both place waste and mine new panels at the same time. Right now, we have to choose one or the other, and so it's running at a much lower capacity than what we would optimally do. So excess facility work, we've as Oak Ridge has completed ETTP, and that is non-defense, funding, but we've been able to get some more defense funding at Y12 and Oak Ridge National Lab to be able to do excess facilities there. And there are lots of facilities on the National Lab side. There's, I think there was 12 or 13 former test reactors there. The EM is responsible for doing the D&D of those, and then at Y12 also multiple large facilities there. Some of those are inside the security area, some of them are outside. They also, a lot of them have mercury contamination, so we're building the mercury treatment facility there. But we've been able to make significant progress even on other buildings that don't have the mercury. We completed the biology complex this year, and then we have several buildings that we're in the process of doing all of the clean out work and get them ready for demolition. At Portsmouth, as I mentioned, we're in the process of demolishing the first gaseous diffusion plant building there, and then the second and third building we're in the equipment removal phase there, which is the most difficult part, right? Is getting the buildings ready to demolish is hard because you've got to go through the whole criticality analysis, make sure that you've removed any deposits in the piping, and then remove all that piping, and then on all the equipment, and then have it ready for demolition. But that's a major accomplishment at Portsmouth, and a skyline change, right, to be able to see that first big building coming down. It's Paducah, and if you looked at the three gas diffusion plant sites, right, ETTP, all the buildings are done. We're just doing soil and groundwater work. At Portsmouth, we're in the process of taking down the first building and working on the other two. Well, at Paducah, we're still in the, we're really in the maintaining the facilities phase, but we're going after the trichloroethylene plume that's under the building. So that's, we're continuing to work that to make sure that that plume is mitigated. And once we get a little further along with Portsmouth, we'll start seeing D&D at Paducah. And then, that'll sort of transition over to that site. At Moab, we have significant ramp up of funding here to be able to do additional mill tailings and try to finish up the shipments in the next 2 to 3 years, and then finish closure of the site in 2 years after that. And this allows us to buy additional heavy-duty rail cars to be able to do more mill tailings per shipment, as well as do additional shipments per year. At Los Alamos, so when we requested this funding with additional funding for DP road contamination, actually the good news is that this was off-site contamination that was found on a parcel of land that we had transferred to the community for reuse. In doing the investigations, there isn't any additional contamination. We've been able to verify that everything that we did find was the total amount. We were concerned that there could be more, and we had asked for additional money to handle that, but I think we're in a good position there. We also got some additional funding to start D&D of some of their excess facilities. So the first one is the ion beam facility there. This allows us to start work on that. We're also doing excess facility work at Lawrence Livermore. We have the first one was a pool type reactor, and there's 2 other facilities that we're in the process of doing. But there's several more to go, so this would be continuing effort over the next probably 3 to 4 years to complete that. At West Valley, we're working on the last main processing plant building there. That is the big the final big project to work. So that's one that we will be working on for the next 2 or 3 years to finish up. And then this budget also includes additional funding for this consortium of historically Black colleges and universities to sort of boost our support for minority serving institutions. And then we'll go to the last slide. Just to encourage communication with our sites. As we've talked about, I think we covered this in a lot more detail in the spring, and I'm always willing to talk more about this. But having obviously open lines of communications both ways between stakeholders and the sites to make sure that everybody's aware of kind of where we are with the budget process, where are there opportunities to influence the priorities that the site is asking for. How do we factor that into our compliance agreements, and when there's opportunities for additional funding, or if there's things that are happening, how can we communicate where we need to make changes? And just as a reminder, our until the budget comes out, we can't talk about the budget that's with OMB or the one that's in this being in process internally. That information is embargoed, but we can talk about priorities. We can talk about project schedules and things like that. So those were Eric. That's what I had prepared, but I'm be able to answer questions or go into any more detail that folks would like.
Perfect. Hey, thanks for spending a few moments with us this morning. If it's okay, we're going to walk around the complex and see who has questions for you, Steve. So let's start, kind of go backwards from the way we finished yesterday. We'll start with Hanford. Jeff, Shelley, questions from you guys?
Shelley, you want to start off?
Yeah, it took a while to get the mute button to come up. Steve, thanks for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I do have one right now. I want to think.
Okay, that's fine.
I thought I was ready and I'm not. So.
Oh, snuck up on you. I apologize. Jeff, any questions from you?
No questions. I was just struck by the word indefinitely in that final slide. I think that was a piece that had not slid into place until I saw it there, because we've talked about our desire to see more detailed budgets like we used to in the past, and an idea in my head was, well, shoot, could we see what used to be and try to understand what's happening now based on what once was. Sounds like what I'm hearing today is that's not really an option.
Right. The sort of internal deliberations piece of it is always embargoed. To basically of how the administration comes up with a budget. Those parts of it are, individual project estimates and things. There are, that we do provide certain, information, right? If we have like a approved baseline for a project and things like that, we can share. Just how we arrived at the budget for a particular, or funding for a particular year, is the piece that's
what I tend to hear from people is it's really hard to develop a list of priorities if we don't understand the relative costs between the things that we are weighing. And, even if we had the Yelp review version of $1 sign to $5 signs next to things, just to give a sense of scale, something like that might help on occasion. And, that might also run into issues, but it's one of the struggles that we have when we're trying to talk through trade-offs, which is really, that's the hard part. That's the policy making, right? And it feels like something that the public groups ought to be able to participate in. But thank you.
But I think you can at, well, if you looked at, the budget request at the, at a little bit lower than the site level, at least for the larger sites, like Hanford, you've got the PBS level, we call it, the project or program baseline summary or project baseline summary level. You've got, you could see what those major pieces of the funding are, which then within that, the site could tell you what scopes could be done within that, looking at the prior year, right? So you could get sort of a relative sense, right? If we know, like the, tank waste, at RP, if that was 700 or enacted 784 million or something like that, if we're asking for more or less, what that's going to do for you. And you could look at specific areas like, again, by like soil and groundwater, D&D, that might be helpful way to look at it. It's not going to give you the sub PBS level that you really want to see that real lower level of detail. But it would give you at least within those things what the scope would be.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks, Jeff. Great question. And I like the Yelp review suggestion. That's interesting. All right. So if we move to Idaho, we have Terry and Josh. Terry, any questions?
Oh, really good presentation. Thank you. No other questions.
Hey, Josh, anything from you? All right. Nevada, Frank.
Oh, thank Mr. Trishman for presentation. Always entertaining and informative, obviously. No further questions, or actually no questions at this time, though. Thank you.
Sure. Anthony, anything from you?
No questions for me. Thank you. It's always interesting to see the breakdown of where the funding goes and specifically how everything is coming together.
All right. Northern New Mexico, Sherilyn?
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I too enjoyed the presentation. I especially like the breakdown for each year so we can examine them and also into the future. So I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Elena, any questions or comments?
Just a few. Looking at WIP, thank you. Looking at WIP, will there be continuing improvements on monitoring HVACs and filters? That was a huge finding in the accident investigation board when the original accident with WIP. Will some of that be folded in as well?
You broke up a little bit. You said specifically monitoring of air filtering. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the air monitors and also the continuing improvements for monitoring and filters and HVAC. There were some insufficiencies during the last accident, and that was found by the accident investigation board. So.
Yeah, I don't know the specific answer to that, so I'm gonna have one of our, the WIP experts give you a specific answer, because I would be all I know is that we are building, the new safety significant containment ventilation system, which is planning to come online. But I don't know specifically what changes they're making to the air monitoring system.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
And we're always finding surprises on DP Road, so there'd be a little extra funding just in case something else pops up.
Yes, well, yeah. If you look at the marks, I think we are getting that extra funding, so we will be able to do the remediation there, assuming that's what Congress goes. So I think we were relieved that there wasn't a larger amount of contamination, but there's still plenty of cleanup work on site to take care of. So that money will be well used.
There is. Thanks. One last comment. I'm glad that there's some funding earmarked for the consortium for minority serving institutions. I used to work with New Mexico State University, and I was on a bridge program through BES, DOE, Basic Energy Sciences, where we bring our students over to the lab. And I think that's wonderful to continue to develop those. But also speaking to that, we need to look at people who are not just in STEM, but those who are STEM adjacent or STEM supporting. That makes for a better, fuller mission. And we have people with who have different voices of academia and training, and that's also part of the diversity, and it builds for a healthier program. That's my comment on that one.
Hey, thanks, Elena. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Mm-hmm.
All right, if we slide to Oak Ridge, Shell, any questions, comments?
Thank you, Steve, as always, for the presentation. I think all of my questions have already been addressed by other members of the board. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks. I'm not seeing Leon's name. Leon, are you there by chance? No? Okay. Didn't want to put you on the spot. All right, Paducah, we have Don, Fran, questions from you guys?
Steve, thank you for your time this morning. The presentation is very informative as always, but no questions from Paducah.
All right. If we look at Portsmouth, we have Bob and Carlton. Bob, questions?
Yes, sir. No questions for me. I thank Steve for the presentation. He does a great job, and we're extremely grateful for the funding and support we get from the Department of Energy.
Carlton, any questions from you? You good?
None, sir.
Thank you. All right, Savannah River, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve, for the presentation. I think you alluded to this, but I'll ask anyhow, just to make sure and confirm what I heard. You mentioned that the budget is very healthy or fully formed, or whatever term it was you used. What's the difference between this year's proposed budget and what's been asked for in the past?
So if you look at, so in that doesn't have our requests, but we had, I think, in 21 about a $6.1 billion request. So it's this allowed us to, this budget request is allowing us to make significantly more progress if you look across the complex. So, with the $1.5 billion more, it meant we could continue doing, a lot of work. It hampered, for instance, we could only fund the highest, compliance requirements, like continuing the DF law work or tank retrievals, but we had to minimize doing some of the other work, like the remediation work. Well, this budget allows us to then be able to continue doing like the 324 building, K area, the waste encapsulation storage facility work. So it just allows us to complete the work that, quite frankly, Congress was funding. If you look at the request level and what the enacted level was, now they're much more aligned, with the same very similar priorities. I don't know if that was quite gets at your question, or if you want to maybe.
No, that's fine. And that's more or less consistent with what Todd Schrader said yesterday. $1.5 billion off of you said initially what 6.1. That's pretty healthy jump in percentage. So it sounds like we're doing a lot of topping off of programs and that sort of stuff. So that's fine. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's allowed us at some of the smaller sites too, like Moab or West Valley, to build to try to get, in the past sometimes we've had minimal funding for those, where they're just barely making any progress, and this allows us to really fully fund those and get those done. So it's you can see it, a lot of, again, at Savannah River, we want to have enough funding. It's great to have a salt waste processing facility come online, but if we don't have more money to actually retrieve tank waste at the 9 million gallon a year rate versus 1 million a gallon a year where we were a year or two ago, then it doesn't help us, right? So it's getting that additional funding just to be able to run at the full rate. So that it does make a big difference.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome.
Hey, Shelley, I know I put you on the spot earlier. Did you come up with a question, or are we good?
Hey, Shelley, I think you're muted still.
Still on mute? I am not.
There you go.
Hopefully you can. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jordan.
So, yeah, part of it is frustration that made me, sit here and ponder for a bit. There was a time, Steve, when we used to get the PBSs, and we got them in January, and we really understood where the line was, and it made us a heck of a lot better activists as a board, as boards, and as individuals representing organizations. For getting the funding that we hoped we could get to further, other projects like WESF and 324 and K area at our site, specifically. Do you ever see us having that opportunity, to see those PBSs again in the public realm? I mean, we had evening meetings. People came prepared to weigh in. Did some exercises with dots on papers on what looked the most important, and kind of got a collective view. And those days are gone, and I'm hoping not forever. I'd like to see that not be the case, but I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, I think it's. I think we have. We just need to figure out a way that we can share that information, or maybe not the detailed information that you used to get, because that actually is a fairly long-standing OMB A11 policy, and maybe we weren't exactly following it. I don't know, but
no.
But if you look at the as I was mentioning earlier, I think at the PBS level, that funding level, the congressional budget, that's publicly available, right? So the scope and the dollars for that at the PBS level is available. It's just not the details of what each increment below that in the next, that's where we really can't talk about. But we could talk about what scope we could do within that, equivalent amount, I think. Maybe that's where we just need to work a little bit more. I don't know what your meetings are like now, if it, where you're not getting exactly what you need. And I appreciate the comment that, not having the dollar amounts, it's hard to know when you're looking at priorities, you might be like, well, if this costs a lot less, I might rather do 2 of these things than this one big thing. But,
well, for us, it's always wrapped around risk, where is our risk and how do we reduce it? And,
And that discussion, yeah, you should be able to talk to risk and at least relative cost of things,
Yeah.
Because even our, try as we might, our estimates are, a lot of times, as not exactly what it ends up costing. It's eternally optimistic a lot of times of what things are going to end up costing. So, when you look at it, you still have to. You're going to have to make some judgments, even if you had the dollar amount. So I think focusing on the risk and what priorities and things you think we can get done. The site should be able to tell you what things they think they can get done, scope-wise, within a certain budget, even if you didn't have the exact dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Just hard to know what to ask for and what's reasonable, at this given time. So.
Yeah, when you think about trying to prioritize and thinking about Richland, should within the budget request, is 324 getting that remediation done higher priority than K basins, and then we can figure out which things we could probably make progress on both, given our pretty reasonable budget.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could decide if we cut a little bit which one we were going to do. You could decide on those sort of trade-offs, or if there's other, those are the first two that popped into my head. But those are the kinds of decisions we're having to make now. So like when we think about it.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Appreciate your presentation and your time. It's good to see you.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to see you.
Hey, Steve, it is always good to see you, and it's great to have you, and we appreciate the information, and everyone's always excited to see budget, because that's the driving force behind a lot of this, are the numbers, and you make this easy and helpful for us, and we're very appreciative of that. So thank you for your time and your continued input with the boards.
You're welcome, Eric. Great to see you.
Yeah. All right, guys. So you can see we went a little long on that segment. So let's plan on taking a short break. I have 5 till the top of the hour. So what if we take a 10-minute break and come back at 5 after the hour? And then we'll start board business and lead into our discussion of recommendations. So the next little bit's all about you guys. Hey, and as we were talking earlier, I don't know if you guys caught it right before we went online. Kelly was telling us that her next door neighbor was jackhammering their driveway, and there was construction work going on, which reminded me that Idaho leads the nation in per capita OSHA reports. True story. They really do. They also, coincidentally, lead the nation in per capita wine consumption. So there might be a correlation there. So avoid the accidents. It's still early. Avoid the wine. We'll be back in 10 minutes, and we'll talk about, we're going to start with the SRS recommendation. All right, guys, see you in just a second. Hey, don't forget Idaho videos rolling through the breaks. If you're interested, check those out.
The cleanup mission at the Department of Energy's Idaho National Laboratory site officially began 30 years ago when the INL was added to the Environmental Protection Agency's National Priorities List. Of principal concern was the INL's impact on the underlying Snake River Plain aquifer, a primary drinking and agricultural water source for more than 300,000 Idahoans. The INL's historic use of unlined wastewater disposal ponds, injection wells, accidental spills, and waste discharges created contaminant plumes beneath the 890 square mile site. With the end of the Cold War, the country's focus shifted from production to environmental cleanup and better, more responsible waste disposal practices. The EPA, the state of Idaho, the U.S. Navy, and the DOE signed the Federal Facility Agreement and Consent Order, FFACO, in December 1991 to address the historic contaminant release sites. The agencies have since signed all 25 records of decision outlined in the cleanup agreement. In addition to the Federal Facility Agreement and Consent Order, the DOE and State of Idaho continue to make progress on milestones outlined in the 1995 Idaho Settlement Agreement. This agreement contains enforceable milestones for the removal of transuranic waste, spent nuclear fuel, high-level granulated waste called calcine, and radioactive liquid waste currently stored in an underground tank farm. Tremendous progress has been made over the last 30 years at remediating the aquifer and reducing the environmental footprint at the Idaho site. To date, more than 57,000 of the 65,000 cubic meters of transuranic managed waste has been shipped off-site for disposal. Almost 9,000 cubic meters of buried waste have been exhumed. 98% of the site's spent nuclear fuel has been transferred to safer dry storage. 11 of 15 underground high-level waste tanks have been emptied, cleaned, and grouted, and more than 200 surplus buildings, including reactors, have been removed. Cleanup actions continue at just 3 INL facilities: the Test Area North, Idaho Nuclear Technology and Engineering Center, and Radioactive Waste Management Complex. Factoring in all agreements, the DOE and its contractors have completed 98% of all cleanup milestones on or ahead of schedule in Idaho. The Snake River Plain aquifer and public are considerably safer today. With 30 years of experience and counting, DOE will continue to keep its cleanup commitments to the citizens of Idaho.
All right, guys, I have 12:05. So if we can make our way back to our, wherever you are in the world in front of your laptop computer, we'll get ready to kick this off. Hey, just as a point, and I'm sure you guys are all well aware, the state of Idaho has 4.5 million acres, 4.5 million acres of what's considered wild land. That means there are no defined roads on any of that acreage, right? 4.5 million wild acres, which is somewhat fitting because we are plowing ahead with no real roadmap at this point. We have a board business going on the rest of the day. A couple mileposts we want to hit. We want to make sure we hit the SRS recommendation. We want to make sure we hit charge 1, charge 2. But really, we're kind of following your lead on this, and as discussion takes us and where we go. So we're going to open it up to that. Greg, are you with us, buddy?
I am here, sir, and let me know what you would like me to do.
Absolutely. You did such a great job explaining and putting the recommendation coming from the SRS board into context earlier. I know Jordan has the capability to put that up for us to look at. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we get into discussion?
I don't believe so at this point. I think this is a process or a mechanism that would be very helpful to a lot of folks. I know it would certainly help us at Savannah River. It sounds like it would help some of the folks at the other advisory boards. And I think it might help Kelly and her folks too, in terms of taking some pressure off of the process. So I will just recommend it with those ideas in mind and put it forward for further discussion and comments and suggestions.
All right. So before we get into the art of working this recommendation for our purposes, I want to open it up for discussion from you guys. So for the board chairs online, and we're going to try this a little different than we've done some of the things in the past. I'm going to ask you to be a little more assertive. So you can just unmute yourself and jump in on the conversation. It's just us sitting around a table and we're being very casual and informal. And my heart stopped because Greg Simonton unmuted himself. And I was like, morning, Greg. Anyway, from the boards, what do you guys think? Is this going in the right direction for you? What thoughts on the recommendation from Savannah River?
Let me ask a question. It's Don Barger, Paducah.
Yeah,
Don. Let me get our picture here. Here we go. When we talk about this one, and you talk about temporary, I don't know whether, temporarily retain their seats. If you still fall below the 75%, they shall appoint within 30 days. Is it possible then that somebody's appointed, the package comes through, so the person may have served only one meeting as a member, and then they're off again?
Eric, should I answer that?
Yeah, Greg, we'll let you go ahead and take a swing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I think it's certainly possible that could happen. So there are two things that could conceivably going on. If you're talking about a lapsed member, their term is temporarily extended. Presumably, they would be up for reappointment, and so that might not be a problem. But it's certainly conceivable that the site manager could appoint somebody who's completely new to the program and served at one meeting and then was not appointed formally. So I guess it's certainly conceivable that something like that could happen. Sure.
What do you see as any implications of that?
I don't know that go ahead.
Get you the numbers you need. I know where you're trying to get to so that you don't have a 6-6 or a 3-3 tie or something like that. It allows that to move forward. But are there other things that we've not looked at as far as any implications by having somebody who only serves one meeting and then they're off?
Right. That's something that's certainly within the bureaucratic realm that I am not familiar with. I saw Kelly raised her hand. I don't know if any of the other people who have deeper knowledge of the rules and regulations, they might have some insight on that. I don't, from my perspective, my naive perspective, it doesn't seem to me that it would be an issue, but there might be something that makes it an issue. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Wait a minute.
Oh, got another comment from Fran here.
I've been quiet yesterday, but here I go. On this temporary member, could it possibly be that this be qualified as someone who has served on the board in past years that would have sufficient information and acquaintance with what is going on instead of somebody that might be chosen that's not really up to speed on anything or have any knowledge?
It seems to me like typically where this might happen is it's going to be a lapsed member, somebody who has been on the board and has probably been renominated for the board, and their term, it just has not been formalized yet. So I would, typically, I would think it's somebody with some experience. I believe that the site manager would certainly have some incentive to try to, if he or she did appoint somebody, to appoint somebody with some knowledge or experience that's relevant and would be helpful. But I guess it's conceivable you could end up with a complete novice in there who had no idea about what was going on. But that's not what I would expect 98% of the time.
Other questions from anyone?
This is Shelley Hanford. It'd be very, very difficult to implement this with our board in any way, because we're a board of organizations and the organizations decide who sits in those seats. And so I see some issues with this idea, and I guess I want to throw out the idea that maybe the emphasis is on the wrong syllable. Maybe it's not our job to fix it, but to try to help in some way, if we can, Kelly and her team streamline the process so that the packages go through more swiftly. So I was thinking about this last night and thinking, what if we formed a team that could work with Kelly and folks, get a roadmap down on paper, a diagram, whatever you want to call it, that says, here are the actual steps that she has to chase these appointments through to get them to fruition. And is there a way to streamline that? And if we could couple, that suggestion of streamlining with why it's important for our boards to have more agility and to get these appointments sooner, and list off the things that are important to us, such as continuing institutional knowledge and maintaining that as we see old members transition out and new members come in, and those kinds of things to really bolster what's important about these boards, why they're important to DOE. I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a better way of doing it than trying to change how we are doing our business now to fit what isn't working, but seems to not be working smoothly in terms of getting these appointments through.
Hey, Shelley, that's a couple of really great points. One is, if you remember from Kelly's discussion yesterday, that at least in terms of membership, we are 7 boards plus 1 or 1 board plus 7, because there are some functionalities that are just different between the HAB and the other boards. One's not good, one's not bad. It's just the reality of the world we live in, right? There's just differences. So we have to be very cognizant of the fact that some of our recommendations that suggest this is what we want to do for membership don't always fit. So what we might need to look at is like, if we want to go forward with this, is clarifying some of our language for it to fit globally. And two, I think the other question, Greg, that I heard a little bit from Don and Shelley, and not to put you on the spot, but I wanted to ask the question, is your priority in this recommendation the intent that DOE address this issue and find a solution going forward, or that the solution recommended in or the solution prescribed in the recommendation is the right solution? Does that make sense? Are we looking at intent, or are we looking at mechanism for delivery?
Well, I don't know. I guess maybe it's both. I think it's one, a mechanism. All I know is we're a full board of 25 operating with 6 now. So whatever is happening now is not working. I guess my question back to Shelley would be, so Shelley, the option is you end up with an expired membership and nobody to represent them because of the process, versus with this mechanism, you could at least temporarily extend that person's membership or that membership and have that representation at least going forward until the formal process can be completed. Mm-hmm. That's how I would think of this. I mean, this is a way, I think, for us to keep our boards filled out. And I don't think that would be any way detrimental or contrary to your process. I know y'all are different, but you still have an incentive to keep your board members, your board populated.
Yeah, we do. We do have an incentive to keep them populated, keep it populated. We also have a FACA, ruling that we work under. And I guess it's not clear to me, because we haven't really talked this out. I understand your frustration, Greg. I really understand it. We're very much in the same boat. We've had people that have been waiting for over a year now. That's a long time, and some say adios. They're done. So, I guess for me, it's like, what can we do to fix it so that it's permanently fixed? So we're not in another year having to cobble on some other clause or another one or another as we go along in an attempt to try to keep these boards populated. And if there isn't a way we could fix this so that we're done, at least for a few years. And I guess that's the question I posed to Kelly and her team, and because I guess I'd like to see it work. I'd like to see the process work and not be so cumbersome. And we have many eager people that are willing, that want to come on and can't at this point. So I guess my question would be to Kelly, do you see an opportunity or opportunities to leverage some of these, burdensome steps where, pit stops where all of these appointments have to get checked off, and the gatekeepers, could you see of a way of getting rid of them, of streamlining this process, and so that it can be more agile? And if so, could we as chairs and vice chairs, and actually anyone from our boards who are interested in working on this, be of service and help make this happen? Have you thought about that?
So I can tell you, yes, I've thought about it. I've been trying to work to figure out exactly what options we have. Like I mentioned yesterday, we have more options on the portion of the membership process that EM controls. And so that's really where we have the most leeway. Unfortunately, most of the membership process is dictated outside of EM. And so there's not as much opportunity for us to be able to implement the change, but we can communicate why we think change is needed and work with the other organizations outside of EM to explain to them the impacts that the current process is having. I can tell you that I am reading as much as I can and researching as much as I can to find opportunities for how we can fix the issue of lapsed memberships. I don't have anything concrete that I can share today. Regarding the recommendation, what I feel would be most beneficial is for the chairs, if you guys do want to write a recommendation, is rather than trying to come up with a process for fixing it, it would be very helpful for people to know the impact that this has on your boards and your communities, the LAPS membership. Because I can explain it to the various organizations and reviewers, but I think, as with everything, your recommendations and perspectives have a lot of power and a lot of insight that is coming from the specific communities that I can explain on your behalf. But if it's coming from you, I think that it has a different type of weight than if it's coming from me telling people about what we're hearing. So I think the recommendation definitely has a lot of potential. I think it's great that we're trying to think of ways to solve the problem. I think that actually coming up with the exact details and the percentages of the 75% and who would have the authority, I think that the first step is actually to find out if we can even pursue something like this, and then give me the responsibility of trying to figure out how to make it work within our system. I do appreciate all of the discussion here and the ideas. It's very helpful. I just think that if you get too far in the weeds about how exactly to do it, it may be a little bit too much in the weeds, and really what we need is the overall recommendation rather than how to fix it, since we really don't know what our options are yet. So you may even include in the recommendation, maybe a suggestion could be, and then you could list, like Greg has already listed, the suggestion. But I think ultimately what I'm hearing is that you want us to try and fix the problem, and you have a suggestion as to how we can do it. But if we can't do it exactly as you guys are recommending, I think what I'm hearing is that's okay. Just try and fix it. Get it fixed somehow. Here's a suggestion. But if this isn't the right suggestion or this doesn't work, do something else.
If I can jump back in real quick, maybe I misinterpreted Eric's question. I don't see this as this particular recommendation as a fix for the 18-step review process. I see this recommendation as a solution to when the 18-step review process fails. And it's just a temporary solution. I don't think this is the process to fix that extended review process, and I didn't propose it in that. It's only, like I said, it's only a temporary solution. I will say this, having been around government and worked in government and studied government and all that, if we undertake to fix this review process, most of which we've been told is outside of even our direct control. When I say our, I'm talking about EM. We're just going to be beating our heads up against the wall. People are invested in this process. People like power, and they're not going to give up the power to sign off on some committee that that they have some vague interest in. People are not going to give up that power easily. They're not going to give it up within a reasonable time. This is an easy solution that site managers already have to appoint people, and all we have to do is just very easily extend it to the case of lapsed memberships. I always assumed that you guys or DOE would implement it however it would work. So if the 75, I don't want to get into a debate over the 75%. That doesn't matter. That's just the way it came from us originally. We could have modified that when it came up to you all if we knew that was important to do. That's not really the point. The point really is I guess the site managers can fix the problem on a temporary, not permanent, but on a temporary basis. And that's what this recommendation is proposing.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, we've got Shell, Terry, and Jeff with their hands up, and Kelly, your hands up as well. So
thanks, guys.
Kind of going on. Yeah, Shell.
So, Shelley made some really great points, and I want to see the process work too. And so when I look at this recommendation, I really feel like it's a both and. So if we want to honor what Kelly is sharing with us about how she thinks we could think about this, I do think we need a temporary solution where members, and I think I would put a caveat in there, in good standing, could be extended if we're in a situation where this package is just like egregiously long and approval process. And that shouldn't be, I would think, controversial. At the same time, I also think this recommendation needs to explicitly call out that we want to see a concerted effort to streamline the process. And that allows us to do our job through the temporary, we can do this temporarily with extensions, but will also give us the opportunity within this recommendation to outline a second bullet that says, and these are the impacts. This erodes the trust of the public when we cannot function as a board. And so it is contrary to the very thing these boards are designed to do, right? We're designed to work with the public, to represent the public, to be a part of the public, and we're not allowed to do that. That erodes trust. So I feel like it's a both and. I feel like we can address both things with this recommendation. And at the end of the day, it's a recommendation. So if DOE comes back and says, great, we hear you, yay, nay, temporary solution, yay, nay, we'll take a look at this. I feel like that's at least us putting on paper how we feel about this. And it puts accountability to what Kelly, who I know it has a vested interest in seeing this process become a better process for us all, but it puts accountability to it. It takes what she said that she wants to do, and it says on paper, this is how we want to see this change. So I'll just stop there.
No, that's great, Shell. I love the both and approach in just about everything in life. That's always makes everybody happy. But I think you're right. I think documenting the discomfort is really important in showing that not for Kelly Snyder or Mark Gilbertson, but for the folks outside of the knowledge of what we do and who we are, right? That's really where we're gonna go. All right, I got Terry and Jeff with their hands up. Terry, what do you have, ma'am?
Hey, Shelley just said a lot of what I was exactly thinking. I think it's both things. About a year ago, we were really sweating whether we could have a meeting because some of our board members had not been reappointed. So by having just an option just to kind of carry it through, just to keep things going smooth, would be a really nice option to have short term, not a fix all, but just to help us in the meeting. And Kelly, we support everything that you're doing and appreciate you trying to streamline the process. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry. Hey, Jeff, what do you have, brother?
Hey, thank you. In our discussions that we've had at the local site, Steve Wigman, our chair, has talked about the idea, and others, why can't we have the continuing resolution version of how to deal with lapsed members, which sounds a lot like what I'm hearing today, that you keep the train moving. From what I heard Greg describe at the beginning of the meeting, I'm not 100% sure this would apply at Hanford. I don't think it's for us because we have so many people who've been on the board longer than 6 years, so many who would need that exception. And it sounded like this advice would exclude that situation. So given that it kind of sounds like this particular fix might not be for us, I don't want to stand in the way if it will help other boards, is my own perspective on it. However, is there a way for a site manager to work with the nominating authority of the interests of our board, for instance, to figure out who might be a good temporary fill-in while we figure out the rest, work with the organization. To Shelley's point about wanting to see the diagram of the process, it's this idea that you can't fix it if you can't see it. And if we could see the various steps in the process, I think it'd be fun to make it into a board game, and let's make each packet a piece, show where it is, and let's put dates and durations on it. Let's figure out how long things are taking. And that might help us figure out in future years how to smooth those parts of the board that are really hard to get past. And my coworker who I'm chatting with in the background said, well, maybe we ought to put this on the same cycle as our budgets where we're thinking 2 and 3 years out. We can't do it there. And then finally, Kelly, to your point about it helps for the other people in the process to understand how this is affecting us. If we do have a section of what we're talking about that is recommendations, we could put that impacts concept into the background of whatever we're talking about and saying, here's how it's affecting Hanford, here's how it's affecting Savannah River, et cetera, et cetera. So grand, unified, there you go. Thanks.
It's awesome, Jeff. Hey, you mentioned playing the board game, and it reminded me of the membership package board game would be like playing Risk with my kids, where an hour and a half in, everyone's crying, no one's talking to each other anymore, the board's on the floor. So but I like the idea of trying to understand and grasp the process. Hey, Jeff, since I've got you, is there a way, in the spirit of both and, we can take what Greg has created that works for more of a traditional FACA board and create verbiage that works for Hanford? And maybe it's not necessarily, again, trying to solve the problem, but just saying, hey, listen, the phrasing continuing resolution of a board member is kind of an intriguing line. So just wanted you to think about that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah. And I think that it comes down to, do we want to draw a line for people who have been on boards longer than 6 years? And that's in the case of our situation where, and that's where maybe working with the nominating authority of the interest that is being represented there, the site manager could have some discretion of, I look at Bob Suyama, who has been our tank waste committee chair and is representing Benton County and is a lapsed member. And our vice chair of that committee is Susan Leckband, who we might all know. So our tank waste committee has no leadership right now. And that's a tough situation to be in. And both of them are long running members. So would this proposed fix actually help that situation? If we're drawing a line at the 6-year thing, it wouldn't. And so is there a way where maybe Benton County could bring in a newbie filler? Well, I don't know if that works either, because you're still missing that leadership.
Sure.
So, sorry, that was a long walk I'm not sure.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
No, this
Hey,
is,
Bob?
can I jump in for 1 second though?
Real quick, Shelley, what you got?
Yeah, I like the idea of the site manager being able to just say, look, you're going to continue in these seats and we'll stay there until there's resolution with the packets. It could be that simple. And and that's short and sweet. I think might be a possibility.
Hey, Bob Carlton, I see a hand raised in Portsmouth.
Yeah, I'd just like to get a little bit of clarification here. Obviously, Portsmouth is one of the boards that has had extreme difficulty in filling membership anywhere even near our max. It sounds good to me to let people on the board who want to be extended get extended, or people who have been off the board in the past. We have several people that have turned off that didn't wanted to stay on, and I'm sure would be willing to fill those positions. In our case, a temporary position, maybe a year or more. It's going to be much more than 30 days. But I guess my real question is, are those the only people we're talking about? I don't see how you could fill the position with anyone who hasn't already been vetted by the Department of Energy. Even someone who may be in the packet process, if they don't get approved, or you're bringing somebody in who's never applied to be a member, what if they vote on things? And what if they're in the packet process and you're letting them vote for 6 months, and then DOE says, you know what, we're not going to appoint you to the board? Does that go back and affect what they voted on? I just don't see how you could put anybody on the board except people that have already been through the process and are current board members or former board members. And maybe I misunderstood. Maybe that's the whole point. But I was just trying to get some clarification on that, please.
Yeah. Okay. This is Greg.
Greg, go ahead. Yeah.
That's to me. I mean, we all. My perspective on this is everybody works within the regulations that are applied to them. So I assume that a site manager would not appoint somebody again, remember, this is temporary that we're suggesting, somebody who was not qualified to serve either by expertise or vetting or whatever other regulations are considered. I mean, again, I think 98% of the time, this would probably be a situation where somebody who's been on the board, the membership application package has not been approved, and they're basically just waiting for the application to be finalized so that they can be formally appointed. I mean, I guess it's possible that site managers could do something completely unexpected. I wouldn't expect them to. I don't think they would have any incentive to. And I'm certain, but I guess you never know. People misbehave all the time. So, I guess they could do something that's not within, that's not appropriate. But that wouldn't be the normal expectation by any stretch of the imagination.
Then could I please ask Kelly, would the Department of Energy let the site manager appoint somebody to the board who's not been through the process of the board vetting?
I don't have a firm answer, but I can tell you what the current practice is. So Greg has mentioned a couple of times that site managers already have the authority to appoint members in certain situations. And the background behind that is if a member who has gone through the formal appointment process has to leave early and not fulfill their 2-year term, the site can appoint somebody to fill the remaining term. So in that situation, that person is not fully vetted at the site and headquarters level. The site and the person who's sitting in the DFO role, so myself, we would discuss, who they want to appoint for the remaining of that term, and then a decision would be made. So yes, there is a current situation where people do get appointed to the board without fully being vetted through a membership package. I can also say that there are situations where a site appointment did not get approved through the full process when they reapplied for additional terms. And that's something to consider. Because of various situations, people have not been reappointed. And I think everybody knows that when you do apply for membership, you get a 2-year term and then you do have to reapply so that those renewals are not automatic. Going to the question of if headquarters would approve for a site manager doing this under the constraints of this recommendation, I can't answer that. It's essentially not an EM sole decision because we have to follow under FACA and the committee management office and follow through legal. Any recommendation that we have that even if EM supports it, we still have to get approval through essentially the same group that does the membership package because they all have a say in this. So I can't say for sure if headquarters would support this. I can tell you that EM is interested in finding a solution that would help the process.
Kelly, this is Michelle. I wanted to clarify an administrative point regarding interim appointments. They are also vetted through General Counsel headquarters after the DFO has done their vetting and believe the candidate is a good candidate. And then once DOE headquarters General Counsel has given their blessing, the site may appoint to fill in a vacant term.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that clarification.
All right, guys. So here's where we are. We have about 10 minutes where we need to kind of decide what path forward we want to take on this, right? And what I've heard so far are the following things, and you guys, feel free to correct me if I miss something. One is this is complicated, and our individual site procedures and policies make it a little more difficult, combined with the fact that it's clearly stated membership is a federal responsibility, right? And that's, we know we're a FACA board, then that falls under GSA and the entire Federal Advisory Committee Act and the 1,000 other boards that are FACA boards. And we're trying to play in line with those. And so sometimes there are things outside of our control which seem logical and simple, but maybe we don't have the authority to enact that we would want. Two, maybe most importantly, when a membership package slips, when our timing falls off, when something hits and there's a bump in the road and we struggle to have numbers to meet. And I think that's hit most of our boards or come close to our boards over the last year for various reasons. COVID, a new administration, just improving our system, which takes time, and you put in new things, you work through the kinks. What we're finding is when we're unable to meet, especially when it runs for a month or 2 months or an extended period of time, it is painful, and it's a little embarrassing. It's a little disheartening. It erodes at your personal self-value and worth. And one of the things that I am really thankful for, and I hear it from Kelly and all the other staff, is it is great working with these advisory boards because you guys are volunteers wanting to make a difference for your community and DOE. And when we put in what feels like a silly rule that prevents you from doing what you were wanting to do and to be helpful and to be beneficial to your community, that is not something we like. It's not something you guys like. Right. Mark Gilbertson has said in the comments, he really wants you to kind of provide, that feedback so they can pass on to the others, that discomfort, that what it means, not from a practical meeting calendar perspective, but from an individual perspective, from a board member perspective. What's it mean when we can't meet? What's it mean when it lags and you get this emotional response that kicks up? That's where we need to communicate better to folks outside of our organization so they understand the ramifications of what we're doing. Okay. Greg's written, and the Savannah River folks have written a great draft recommendation for us to start from. I'm hearing, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, that maybe we can make it a little more holistic to fit everyone, but I need direction from you guys on where we want to go. So how would you like to handle it?
Can I make a couple? This is Greg.
Yeah, Greg.
A couple things real quick. One, I remember that we're not suggesting that the site managers are mandated to do this stuff. We're suggesting the site managers are empowered to do it. There's nothing mandatory about any of this. So we want to, I think I want to be clear that was the intent of the CAB on this, the SRS CAB on that. The second thing is, I hate for us to edit ourselves. Self-censorship is going to be bad. If there's a legal constraint on this, let general counsel or whomever come back and tell us it's a problem, and then we can go fix it and send it back up again instead of trying to guess what problems they're going to see. So that would be my general approach to doing this. Then we know specifically what the problems are and we can fix them. In terms of editing, I would just simply suggest that in point 2, we take out basically everything but the first sentence and just say the site manager at sites with the appropriate authority should be empowered to extend board member terms until a new member package is approved. And that's very broad, as was suggested by some folks. I think that would address Shelley's concern about Hanford. And it's just broad. And you know what? Again, DOE is going to do what they want with our recommendation. So this is just us sending a message to them that this is what we think that should be done. It also sends the message that Shell was suggesting, that we've got a big problem here. This is one way we see to fix it. If you don't agree, come up with something else and fix it. So I think it sends that message as well. So I'm hoping we can continue to move very productively forward with this recommendation. I am open to extensive revisions on it. and suggest that, because I think we just need to keep this thing moving and not lose momentum on it. We have too much at stake not to move this forward.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Greg, I appreciate your passion for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Frank, you got your hand up. What do you need, bud?
You want a motion to proceed, Mr. Facilitator?
Yes. Well, I want to know how you guys want to handle it. If you, Greg recommended that we rework bullet 2 real quick and easy, and we can do that.
That would be part of my motion.
Absolutely.
I wasn't sure you were going to go in that direction.
I will go wherever you take me, Frank.
Very good. Then at this time, I would move that Mr. Murray's recommendation on behalf of SRS, with his edits on the fly, be accepted by this body and forwarded to DOE for consideration.
All right. So you can see the lovely and talented Jordan Davies is editing as we speak. So let's open up. Are there other questions, comments, changes that we need to make to this recommendation? Anyone have a real and just, we can't do this at all, like we're hitting a hard block? Bob, Carlton, one of you have your hand up?
Yes, this is Carlton Cave.
Hey, Carlton.
I would like to second that motion that Frank just made, so that we can move on. I believe that's proper.
Did you second that emotion? Did you break out an R&B on me?
It definitely suits.
Oh, I like it. The smoothest man I know, Carlton Cave. All right, perfect. Are there other changes we need to make where anyone that sees we need to do this at this point?
This is Shelley again. For some reason, I don't have my hand symbol here anywhere to click on my screen. I think I do believe this should go forward. I very much agree with getting rid of the percentages. I always get nervous when I see that kind of recommendation because it's just too much to try to play out analytically. But I'm also wondering if there aren't other things that we need to add to this. And I guess that's the question. Would you like to see us, both of you, Eric, you and Kelly both said yesterday, we need to make it clear how burdensome it is for our different boards. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't address some of that in the background at the front of this piece. And include it as one. And so maybe have a small team, get this, and do this by a certain date. I don't know. Is there, are you needing to see this happen immediately? Do we have a week?
I guess that's a good question. Hey, Kelly Snyder? Oh, there you are. Hey.
Guys outside my window right now. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that is awesome. All right, so.
I warned you guys.
Put on a hard hat and an orange vest. All right, so Kelly, if we decide to go forward with this, can we edit offline, get back together on a phone call, adopt it, and then vote on it on our boards? Or if we don't get it completely, we have to wait till spring?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
So you have to have the basis of the recommendation completely drafted, which you have here, and you have to publicly discuss it during a public meeting, which we have done. And this has to go back to each individual board for approval, like any other recommendation. And all of those have to be in public meetings. So yes, I think that you have the foundation. We've had a public discussion where the public could listen to this and weigh in through public comment. So yes, I think that since you have the foundation, you can vote to move forward. But then we have to make sure that we continue to follow the rules and that it is discussed during a public meeting at each of the local boards.
Right, but we can, if they wanted to edit the background to make it more inclusive of all boards, they could, and it wouldn't significantly change.
Correct.
As long as it
There's gonna be,
would.
correct,
Okay.
because there will be another opportunity at the local level when you
Perfect.
each discuss this at your board. So yes, we should be good to go.
Okay, I think that's what I heard you saying, Shelley. You wanted some minor tweaks, but this is a tough venue to do that in.
Yeah, it is a tough venue to do it in. And also, I guess the other question would be, is keeping it as succinct as possible the best thing, and trying to do this today and actually walk through it paragraph by paragraph with, you know, all of us here, and make that happen. Embed it right now.
Perfect, perfect. Hey, Shell Oman, I see your hands up.
Thank you. So I would echo ditto to all of that. And I would also say for the background, also make sure to include in that the impact piece, right, that we talked about. So erodes the trust of the public, et cetera, to make sure that it's poignant enough to convey that all the boards are experiencing this and it has an adverse impact in the work that we do in support of the board and this mission.
That's very important. Thank you. Frank, your hand's up, sir. Frank, did you have anything? You're still on mute. Just checking. All right, Bob, Carlton, your hand's up. Carlton, you have a question? You got two hands up.
I was just going to ask if you were going to call it to a vote. There was the second made, and were you going to call it to the vote?
Yes. All right. So, as I understand this, yes.
I guess this would be left then up to the site manager's discretion whether they would want to appoint anyone. I mean, even if they only had a 50% board, if they're okay with that, you know, they wouldn't have to appoint anyone if they didn't want to. Is that correct? They could take it all the way up to 100% or just leave it wherever it's at.
Bob, that's our intention on it. This is Greg. That was our intention in the writing and using the terms empowered to say that they can do it. But again, it's not mandated that they have to.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, and this is a little, so not as clean as we normally get these. All right, but we're gonna handle this going forward with the recommendation in the format it is, with the direction we're going, the recommendation laid out, and the ability to pull together a small group to do any final wordsmithing to bring back to the full board in a timely manner so that we can take it to our individual boards, vote on it, and then we'll collectively that direction. We're looking for kind of a yay nay from each of the sites to say they're comfortable taking this back to their board once we get the final edit on it, right? So we know there's going to be some additional changes, but it's going to look pretty close to this, okay? All right, so let's go around the complex and see if you are comfortable with this recommendation as it stands now, and we'll go from there. All right, Shelley, Hanford?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Can
Terry,
yes. Sorry, can I ask a process question?
Yeah, Jeff,
Sorry, this is inconvenient. It's been brought to my attention though. If this advice moves forward, how will the individual boards vote on it if they don't have quorum?
I can answer that for you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
A quorum is 50% plus one of the appointed board members. It's not the ideal makeup of the board, meaning like in Savannah River, you know, they want to, their bylaws say they can have up to, I think it's 25 members. The quorum is based on the appointed members, not the target number for how many board members you would like to have or that you have spots for on the board. It's a quorum of those that are appointed. I'm not saying it's a great answer, but that is the legal answer.
Hey, yes, Elena. Oh, we're not catching your audio, Elena.
Sorry. Okay, there we go. So thanks for that clarification, Kelly. So at one point, I was the only active and approved member of our board, while others were being re-upped. So I would have been the only one to vote. So I appreciate your
own little kingdom. I love it.
Yeah, and that's where you have to take in, what's the right thing to do? What's yes, it's by the bylaws, you can do this, but it's also doing the right thing, and letting obviously one person decide for the entire board is not the intent of the board. So it's a balancing. And if I'm not mistaken, Hanford, at their last meeting that they had last week or the week before, I can't remember the date now, they decided, because they did not have what they want as a full board, so all of the various organizations having appointees sitting that are active, they decided that they did not want to move forward with voting, and that's absolutely fine. But there is that option if the board and the local site want to move forward. It's not a must do.
Hey, Jeff, that was a great question. And I appreciate you asking that, making sure that we all had clarification. I should have caught that ahead of time. All right, so we had a yay from Hanford on proceeding with this recommendation. Idaho, Terry?
Yes.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Nevada, Frank?
Want to apologize for dropping off. Today is internet fun day. Nevada votes obviously for this, as we made the original motion, with the understanding that Nevada is a little uncomfortable with further edits that we're not going to necessarily be a part of in any event. We vote for this moving ahead. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Northern New Mexico, Sherilyn?
Hello. Northern New Mexico votes yay on this to move forward.
All right. All right, Oak Ridge, Shell?
Oak Ridge is a yay vote.
Perfect. Paducah, Don?
Paducah is a yes vote.
All right. Portsmouth, Bob?
Yes.
All right. Savannah River, Greg, you want to scream yes from the mountaintop?
Yeah, I'm rethinking this. I think I'm going to vote no. Yes, of course. Yay. Thank you.
It's beautiful. Hey, all right, guys, just so you know that when we see the final edit, if you're uncomfortable with it, if your board's uncomfortable with it, it can get voted down at that. This is how this works, so that we want to make sure that we're all comfortable with this inclusive piece. What would be really great if I could get 2 or 3 volunteers who would work with Greg in maybe doing a little revision on this and bring it into with the notes that Jordan's taken and the other stuff, just kind of filling this out. Is there anybody willing to participate in this little offline small group?
I am willing and able.
Oh, thanks, Shell. Who else do we have?
I'll do it, of course, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd be glad to. Shelley. Thank you.
Nevada County.
Last call. We got a couple more recs coming up, so we may or may not need. So if you want to participate in this and you didn't volunteer, shoot either Jordan or I a message, and we'll get you added. Hey,
that essentially will be a committee. Just make sure to loop in Alyssa and myself so that we can make sure to be present, so we're following all the rules.
Rules, schmoles. Thanks, Kelly. We'll make
And
sure.
can I add one other thing?
Yeah.
Timing wise, I want to make sure everybody is aware that the SSAB charter will be up for renewal, and the one that's currently in place expires in April. And based on how this goes and how everything plays out, I anticipate if changes are able to be made, legal will probably want it incorporated in the charter. So just timing wise, know that that is in April, but we start it well in advance because it goes through the same process as a membership package. So if you guys could give yourself a target date, by the end of this calendar year, that would be wonderful. So we can make sure to include your recommendation in everything moving forward, including potentially the charter.
So Kelly, if I'm looking at that and that's our target, not to put Greg and his group on the line, you've got November, and then I don't know what the meeting schedule is for most boards in December, but you get to the end of the year. And so, Greg, that's probably something we're going to need to turn like in the next week, 10 days, if that's possible.
I think that's fine. I think people have this fresh on the top of their minds and have a lot of stories they can tell. I don't think that's going to be too big of a problem.
I think you got the most of it down already. You've done the heavy lift. So now it's just a little polish on it. Hey, and thank you for taking the lead on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts and your consideration and the discussion about it. I think it's a better product, and hopefully it will help.
All right. Hey, guys, guess what? I have royally screwed up, and I blew right past public comment. So, one, forgive me. Two, we need to take just a quick pause. And Kelly, are there any public comments submitted for today?
No, there are no public comments submitted, and that's why we breezed through.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So the next two items on our agenda, two big topic items. And if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is we've got charges 1 and 2 from the chairs meeting, right? So one of the things as boards we've asked for the last several years is more clear definition from headquarters on what kind of recommendation and work for us to do as the group of chairs. So at the fall meeting last year, Ike White, EM1, gave us 2 very specific, fairly lengthy charges to look at. Do we happen to have those charges, Jordan? Can you pull those? Do you know? I didn't even talk to you about that beforehand, but I'm sure you have it. Look at you. She's the best. All right. So these were asked initially in the fall of last year to develop a best practice white paper that the department could use as a guide for augmenting outreach programs, right? And then each of our boards individually took this and worked on it locally and had a homework to bring kind of a best practices or a spreadsheet of all your outreach efforts back together, which we shared in the spring. And then we created a subcommittee that worked, or a committee that worked out of the chairs to pull together a recommendation. Now, similarly, we did the same thing with charge number 2. Happen to have that one, ma'am? All right, so this one kind of evolved on us a little bit. It started out as your 10-year or your expectation for in-state and future use of the site, and some of us were like, that's too far out. So then we kind of honed it back into this 10-year expectation, primarily based on the DOE's brochure that they use. It's kind of a slick marketing piece that informs stakeholders and congressionals and those in the industry on what major accomplishments are going to take place in the 10 years at our EM sites, right? And there was a lot of discussion on that because, you know, when you're planning a 25-year project, it might not have ended up in the 10-year vision because it wasn't going to get completed. And so we walked through a lot of that. So we came up with a list from each of our sites on how we were communicating this with our local stakeholders and where we were seeing outreach efforts. And we asked a committee to get together to kind of bring the best of that forward in a recommendation. So fortunately, both committees did a great job in pulling all this together. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into charge number 1, and that's Frank Bonesteel. Frank, we're going to let you walk us through this presentation on your charge 1 and with your folks. And then we'll kind of go from there. Hey, Frank, quick question before you get started. Off the top of your head, do you know who all worked on this committee with you?
Yeah, I can give you a list.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Frank, you're looking over your own shoulder right now.
Yeah, that happens.
I like it. Keeping an eye on yourself.
It's a great deal. Okay, the list of individuals who worked on this committee were Fran, Georgette, Terry, Victoria, Jeff, Alyssa, obviously from headquarters, Bob Hall, Kelly, obviously from headquarters, Carlton, and Greg. That was our charge 1 committee. Obviously, you all know their last names, but that was the committee.
Perfect. All right, sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, just as a reminder, Charge 1 was develop a best practices white paper that the department could use as a guide to augment existing outreach and set expectations for future outreach activities. That was our charge. So we prepared a draft which was provided and was disseminated recently. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Hall, who was in charge of the initial drafting, just so you understand how he and what he used to create the first draft. So Mr. Hall, I'll turn it over to you first, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Burright, who prepared the final draft for his input. And not to make the day any longer, then we can jump right into wordsmithing or tearing apart or throwing away or approving whole cloth or whatever our facilitator wants. So Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Frank. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, thank you. So what we, obviously we were given this charge at the fall meeting in 2020, as Eric had mentioned. And so each of the boards were charged with coming up with information that was presented at the the spring meeting of the chairs meeting. What we did was we prepared PowerPoint slides that touched on outreach best practices and improvement opportunities. So each of the boards prepared those slides. There were 21 PowerPoint slides that were prepared. There were 8 Excel spreadsheets. We were provided an Excel template for Charge 1, which addressed all of the outreach activities. Who was the columns in that spreadsheet were who they were conducted by, the timing, was it what we were doing pre-COVID, what we were doing post-COVID, levels of interest and participation from the community, because they wanted to know that, and notes and comments. And so each of the cabs prepared that information, and we had the Excel spreadsheets. So the committee met several times after we were charged in April to come up with this. We developed, discussed, and used 3 different documents in preparing the recommendations. The first was an outreach activities list, which had 8 categories from the Excel template. And I actually prepared this. I went through the Excel templates, which were very complex actually, and tried to come up with some summarization or categorization. So there were 8 basic categories that I put it into in that. We also had and the improvement opportunities, which was an Excel spreadsheet board by board, detailing the information for the PowerPoint slides. I think Frank actually put that together. We had the charge response compiled, which I think Alyssa was the one who pulled together all the slides from each of the cabs that had the outreach best practices and improvement opportunities. So we proved that together, and then we had meeting notes. So I stepped forward and said I would pull this information together. And so what I did was take those 3 documents plus the meeting notes, and rather than really preparing a white paper, tried to prepare a recommendation because of the issues that we're all seeing, about how much time it takes to do this, put it in a format and a context that could be actionable. So I looked at the previous recommendations that were on the headquarters SSAB website as a go-by to structure it. And so I did that and compiled and simplified the information from the meetings into that format. So it came up with observations, recommendations, and attachments. Now, if Jordan could actually bring up the recommendation. Jordan, do you have that? Excellent. Thank you very much. So the recommendation, and hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review it. Initially, it has a background section, whereas it says EMS SSAB understands successful completion of the DOE-EM mission must include a significant community, public, and stakeholder outreach. And so our focus certainly is in trying to do that. So the first section is the observations that were developed as a consequence of what we did. I won't go through them now, but they're observations. So from the notes, from the materials, there were things that many of the sites believed were kind of best practices, things that had worked for them. Whereas recommendations, if you go down to recommendations are really thematic areas of improvement that were agreed upon by the chair's public outreach committee. So these are the areas that we really thought we should focus on. And so I put that together. We ended up with something like almost 20 different items, as I recall. And so at that point, I presented it at one of our meetings. We went through and discussed it. And Jeff Burright, after that, took it and tried to simplify it. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thanks. Well, as Bob just said, we had 20 some recommendations, and the idea here was to put them into bins for people who are in a hurry. And that's really the point of this 2-pager, is for the level of people at headquarters who may not have the time to dig into all of the attachments with the recommendations, to get a flavor of where we all came from. However, it'd be the hope that the career public involvement people are really going to dig in and see the specific recommendations that came from each site. However, what you see on the screen is this attempt to take the collection of recommendations and put them into some thematic areas. And that's really that.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate those quick overviews. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the entire list of individuals who helped with this project. Without them, obviously, nothing would have gotten done. With that said, one other small point, because there was such interest, there were some suggestions that did not get included in this document. So I have complete faith that any missing information quite probably will be brought up at this meeting or subsequent to it to make sure everybody's thoughts and concerns are part of this recommendation. So with that, I would turn it over to our facilitator for moving forward. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, gentlemen, you did a great job. And I appreciate Frank kind of leading the charge, and Bob and Jeff doing the heavy lifting on this. That's always the tough part. All right. Hey, Frank, just so I understand, or maybe Jeff, either one of you, at the bottom of the document, it says additional information. I think the plan is to actually put the Excel spreadsheets, the PowerPoint slides, everything that we've gathered together as an attachment to this recommendation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it'll be our first 472-page recommendation, which is kind of exciting. But
well, it's not really that big, but it's a couple pages. That's why it's not printed out here.
But it's really great. There's a reason we chose to keep all that, and we wanted to make sure we held on to that for institutional knowledge. So thank you guys for sorting through that breadth of information. All right, so I'm going to open it up for you, board members. Thoughts and comments on this recommendation before we start editing. Let's just big broad picture. Is this hitting where you want it to hit? Are we going in the right direction? Feel free to either jump in or raise your hand.
I can chime in if no one else is.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah.
Sorry. So I looked over this previously, and it's right on board with what I was expecting. I fully support this recommendation.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. And thanks for starting the discussion.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Eric, this is Don Barger.
Oh.
I'm very impressed with this document, its thoroughness, and all the work that was done by each of the individuals to create it. And so I'm very much in favor of supporting this document.
Okay.
This is Terry in Idaho. I had the privilege of helping with this, and I support it. I think it's a pretty well-rounded document.
This is Shell from Oak Ridge. I have no concerns.
Well, you guys are the best. All right, so let's if you're okay, Jordan, pulling this up, the recommendation. Sorry. All right, so let's take a second. Are there any tweaks, edits, minor changes we need to consider in this if we're all fairly comfortable? And I say all, speaking collectively. If we're comfortable with the general direction of this, are there any changes or suggestions we need to make?
Hey, Eric, this is Greg.
Hey, Greg.
I want to thank Frank and Bob and Jeff for all their work on this, as well as the rest of the committee. We'd gotten to the final draft, and then it was sent out, and I just had a small edit to a section down at the bottom, number 7. And what I'll do is I proposed some language, but we had already it already been distributed, and it was beyond the time when we could actually make some revisions of that sort. So I just chatted what I would like to propose that replace point 7 with, and the 2 hollow points. And really, in my mind, it's not substantively different. It's just probably more concise in terms of what the thought was. So that would be my proposed revision there.
That feels appropriate from my perspective.
Hey, Jeff, are you good with that? There, Jeff said he's good with it. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Other thoughts, comments, changes?
I want to say, this is Shelley. I want to say thanks for the work that folks did on synthesizing this down, and it's just excellent. And I think the Excel spreadsheets are of tremendous value. I'm really glad to hear they're going to be attached because it gives a very good perspective of each of our sites in the up and coming years. Thanks.
I was just messaging with Susan Leckband, who many of you, shout out to Susan. As many of you know, she served on the SSAB from Hanford for a long time. And one of the things that we always found as we worked on recommendations, you would start very specific and you would see the recommendation, especially so that everyone would become narrowed down and become a little more genericized as it went. And so it's really heartening to see a recommendation with this kind of specificity and this kind of breadth to it that you guys are all seemingly very okay with. I think that says a lot about the commonality between the boards and the desire to see this public outreach move forward, and that there's it's just, they don't always go this smoothly if you're new to this editing process on the national level. And so that's I think that says a lot, and I think that's something to be read with this. So I'm going to be quiet. Any other questions or comments from you guys? Frank, your hand's up.
I was just going to ask Mr. Roberts if we were to a point where we would move to adopt this and move it forward.
I am perfectly okay with that.
Then I so move.
Thank you, sir.
I was second.
Oh, we have a second from Shell? Okay. All right. One last call. Any other edits, changes before we roll this out to the individual boards to see if you're okay? We'll ask the chairs from each board if they're comfortable with this. If they are, we will provide this to your board and ask that you take it up for a vote there. So any last questions, comments, tweaks?
Eric, this is Don Barger. A comment here. Because this is coming from a committee, if we want to make sure we're following Robert's rules, whoever Robert was, because it's coming from a committee that's coming in the form of a motion already, it needs no second from the group, but it is ready to be voted on.
Hey, so when you start Robert's rules, my audio cuts out immediately. I just don't hear anything. I'm smart.
What?
I'm not the best at that. I apologize, Don. Don's right, though, that we did not need a second. And Okay, so let's walk around the complex and each of the chairs. If you're comfortable taking this back to your boards, just a yay or a nay, and we'll see where we stand. All right, Shelley at Hanford.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, I lost you for a second. All right.
Find that button.
All right, Idaho, Terry.
Yes.
All right, and Nevada, Frank.
Nevada votes yes.
All right, Northern New Mexico, Sherilyn.
New Mexico votes yes.
Yes. Oak Ridge, Shell.
Oak Ridge is a yes.
Paducah, Don.
Paducah is a yes.
Portsmouth, Bob.
Yes.
Savannah River, Greg.
Yes, thank you.
Hey guys, you did a great job. And let me commend you not only on the recommendation, but undertaking a really massive task as a group in getting through this. And hopefully, I know I've expressed this to Kelly in the past, hopefully this becomes a model we can follow to get more recommendations from you guys, because there's a wealth of information and talent and experience that we'd love to tap into. All right. We're a couple minutes early, guys, but let's take a break. You guys have been going at it for a while. Research says you can only sit in front of a monitor for so long before like retention and your brain starts to wander. So let's take we're scheduled for a 10-minute break. Let's go ahead and take 10 minutes here and come back at about 1:30. Let's do 1:35. I'm taking a couple extra minutes. We'll make it an even number. Let's come back at 1:35. Adjust accordingly, 35 after the hour. And then we'll look at charge 2. And then Frank has one last business item that I'm aware of, but we'll see if anybody else has anything else. We'll do an open discussion from you guys around the table, and we'll wrap it up then, okay? All right, guys. Thank you. We'll see you at 1:35 Central Time.
A visible landmark at the Idaho Nuclear Technology and Engineering Center of the Idaho National Laboratory site are large concrete silos that remain from the facility's legacy spent nuclear fuel reprocessing mission. These concrete structures, called bin sets, house stainless steel canisters containing 4,400 cubic meters of a dry, granulated, high-level radioactive waste form. Construction of the bin sets began in the early 1960s to support spent nuclear fuel operations at Intech. Beginning in 1963, the Intech facility began transferring liquid high-level waste from a nearby underground tank farm to the waste calcining facility for treatment. The liquid waste was converted to a more stable, dried, granular form in a heated, fluidized bed. The dried waste, called calcine, was then transferred pneumatically to long, cylindrical stainless steel bins within the bin sets arm. The bin sets were built at different times and designed by different architectural engineering firms. Each bin set has a unique design reflecting various design criteria and lessons learned from historical operations. Individual bin sets contain 3 to 12 stainless steel bins. The bins range from 20 to 68 feet in height, and each set of bins is housed in its own reinforced concrete vault founded on basalt 45 feet below the existing grade. Bin set 1 was a prototype, and once it was realized calcining was an excellent process, operations proceeded over the course of 40 years with successively building and filling the bin sets. During the 40-year history of reprocessing government-owned spent nuclear fuel, a total of 7 calcine bins were constructed. 6 contain calcine, while the 7th has always remained empty. In 1995, the Department of Energy and State of Idaho signed a landmark agreement that requires, in part, the 4,400 cubic meters of calcine be retrieved from the bin sets and be ready to ship out of state by 2035. Waste retrieval will require modifications to the bin sets and installation of equipment to remove calcine to meet all the regulatory requirements. INL site cleanup contractor Fluor Idaho has constructed a full-scale replica of calcine bin set number 1 to develop and test technologies to enter the bin set, remove its calcine, and clean the stainless steel bins. The 220 cubic meters of calcine would be transferred to bin set number 6, which has available capacity. Engineers and fabricators had developed a retrieval system for bin set number 1 that they believed could be used to remove calcine from the other 5 bin sets. Cameras able to withstand high radiation fields, a robotic crawler that clings to the bin set walls and can direct calcine toward the pneumatic retrieval system, and articulating vacuum arm will be applied to the other bin sets. The calcine retrieval effort in bin set number 1 is an important first step in completing the removal of all 4,400 cubic meters of calcine from the Intech facility's bin sets. Removal of the calcine and closure of the bin sets is an important milestone to the DOE and state of Idaho. It will complete another chapter of the facility's spent nuclear fuel reprocessing mission and make progress toward completing the cleanup mission at the INL site.
All right, guys, I have 35 after the hour. Hope everyone's making their way back. So I admitted to you, I made the mistake with missing public comment. Unfortunately, we didn't have anyone waiting to make comment, and that was a little fortunate on our part. But I've made a couple other mistakes that I need to address, right? And just to be fair to all you guys, I had fully intended to kind of say thanks to Frank and to Bob and to Jeff Burright for their work on this past chair's recommendation. But in Idaho, where we are, it is illegal, these quirky state laws, to give your beloved a box of chocolates that weighs more than 50 pounds. And I had ordered 51-pound boxes for each of them. And so I am nothing if not a rule follower. So I'll just have to give my thanks and appreciation to you guys and then what we're doing. So, hey, so here's what we're going to do. We are ready for charge number 2. As we get ready to slide into this, Kelly, is there anything you want to kind of lead into to help preface this before we hand it over to Shell in the group?
Yes, thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
I wanted to give everybody a heads up that we are getting ready to, talk about the 10-year strategic vision. And this has been something that the chairs and the committees have been very active working on for several months now. And I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that later today, I'll be sending out an email with this information, but I wanted to verbally tell you that the department is starting to work on the 2022 version of the strategic vision, and that we are soliciting comment from stakeholders. And so you'll be getting an email, the chairs of the boards will be getting an email asking that you take a look at the current strategic vision. And then if you have any comments to please provide them, and the information on how to provide comments will be in the email. But I also wanted to say, in addition to that email coming out, I have already talked to our leadership about, the current charge that you're working on, and explained that, this charge is tied to the strategic vision, which is being worked on. And it may take some time for this recommendation to make its way fully through the approval process, since it has to go back to the local boards if the chairs approve it. And I've given a heads up to leadership that this is coming, and it may not fit within the specific time frame of when they're soliciting for comments. So I want you to know right now, going in, that the recommendation will be considered no matter when it comes in. We'll make sure to look at the recommendations that you guys have decided on related to that 10-year vision. So when you see the email later with a due date that's in the month of November, don't worry, it's not going to impact the date of this recommendation.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so left on the agenda, we have charge 2. We're going to do the introduction to that and look at that recommendation. And then we have, I know Frank has one additional piece of a business he wanted to bring up. And then we'll see what else is on the floor, and open comment from you guys, and then we'll be ready to wrap up. So that's our plan. And we have about an hour and 20 minutes to get through all of that. So, Shell, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Eric. So if you've had a chance to review the draft recommendation for charge 2, you're going to notice that there is a significant overlap in spirit between this recommendation and charge 1, as the strategic vision is a key, if not the key, communication tool or product that would be shared with various stakeholder communities. And so our charge group had a pretty significant amount of discussion about the ask that was put before us with this charge. And we aligned what you see within the body of this recommendation today around some guiding questions that would help us ensure the recommendation is comprehensive, easily digestible, but also creates greater understanding as well as value for the various stakeholder groups. So what were those questions? As an SSAB community, we were asked to express our expectations. That was expressly called out in the charge request. And we also wanted to think about what needed to be seen in the strategic vision and how that's communicated, right? So timeliness, that it includes workforce planning, that the document is language appropriate, for the varying degrees of backgrounds within the intended stakeholder communities, that we actually define who stakeholders are, and just a host of other items. So we asked ourselves that, what was the strategic vision designed to do when we say stakeholders? Is that the public? Is it the media? Is it communities? Is it public officials? How often do we communicate? And what are the best ways to communicate to the local communities that we work with? And so with that all in mind, we drafted the version that you see today in front of you. And it really has three key components. It has the plan development and some specific asks relative to that, a communication element that is pretty specific as well, and then an element tied to public involvement and what the expectation is there, not only with our boards, but with other members of the public. And so with that, I want to open the floor up to my fellow charge peers, Mike Kempt, Sally Shimon, Bob Hall, I think you helped us with this too, and Bill Murphy, if any of those folks have anything that they'd like to add before we bring this document to the greater group for discussion.
This is Shelley Simone. Thank you. You explained it well. I don't have anything else to say, to add.
Great.
Really well done and really well thought out, Shelley. You guys did a great job. And I know those guys you were working with. That's a group you had.
They made me look good.
No, that's ringing. Pulling a bunch of engineers.
Where do we want to start with this?
All right, so let's start with general discussion. All right, so let's open this up, just like we did the last recommendation. What are your initial thoughts? You guys have all hopefully had a chance to look at it and read. Shell did a great job explaining their thought process and where they came from. So I want to hear from the rest of the chairs. What are your thoughts? Are we going in the right direction? And then we'll like look at editing and micro changes. But let's just talk big picture. Hey, we're at the end of day 2. Everybody's done. We have hit that point, right? Where do I hit the pass button? We're good. Anybody with any thoughts or comments? All right. It's a very quiet group.
Not sure if that's good or bad.
I think it's very good. I think it's very good. All right.
As one of the quiet people, I'll speak up saying I'm remaining quiet because I fully support this recommendation and I had nothing really to change or to gripe about.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, this is Sherilyn again. But yes, it's very well written. It's to the point. It's concise. It's a very well written document, very well thought out. Thank you to everybody who participated in drafting it.
It should be of no surprise that when you give bright, hardworking, ambitious people a task, that they come back and they've done their homework and they have a really, really quality product for us to start from. And that's we were talking about that between sessions about what a difference it makes when we have this time to really let it breathe and edit and work it through. It makes things easy. Anyone else with any comments? All right, so let's look for, let's talk about the recommendation and the verbiage itself. Are there any changes or edits or any tweaks we need to make? Obviously, we'll format it so it looks like all the others when they're at the end, but that wasn't this group's task. We'll do that on the back end. it's so much harder to read your faces if you're reading, if you're thinking when we're on Zoom. If we're in the room, it's easy to tell what's going on, but it's a little tougher here. All right, so I'm not hearing any thoughts, changes, or edits. Give you one last chance. Anything you would like to do? Shell, it's like you're going to get a gold star for turning in the perfect recommendation.
Certainly not my work.
Oh,
Thank you to the whole group.
And I think this recommendation is going to be really important. Just while you guys are reviewing it, any last tweaks, thoughts, changes. This 10-year strategic vision, I think, is going to become a bigger deal within DOE, right? And so you providing this input and this evaluation to help them strengthen that process and to get better buy-in from their, in particular, their engaged stakeholders, right? The ones that are really in the know and giving them time so that the 10-year strategic vision can then trickle out to the next layer of stakeholders, and done such a good job of prepping this.
So Eric, this is Shelley Simone.
Yeah.
If I could jump in. I know that the sites are being asked right now to start preparing their plans. We have a 5-year plan at Hanford.
Sure.
You know, in anticipation of the building of the 10-year strategic plan, the update, I should say, to it. So I guess my ask is that, Kelly, if there's a possibility of, if we do agree to this, which I think we probably will before the day is out, that we although it still has to go through our boards, if there's an opportunity of giving a heads up to EM about this and letting them see this draft, maybe that would help. If we're going to, I don't want us to miss the window. I guess that's the answer, or the question. I really don't want to see us miss the window for getting this in as a recommendation to the strategic plan.
Yeah. Yes, that's something that we can definitely do. I'll make sure that it's communicated as draft so that we're, compliant with our operating procedures. But I've already discussed this with Todd Schrader. He knows that a recommendation is coming, but it wouldn't be official until it went through all of the local boards. But he is anticipating reading it in draft form.
Thanks so much.
Other thoughts, comments from any of the chairs?
Actually, I have an edit.
Yeah.
If we could. So underneath communication, on item number 3, second sentence, this should include development of, but not limited to, guidance on when and what. And that would be it.
Thanks, Shell. And I just received a note from Mike Kemp. He's following along on that, I guess, on the YouTube feed. So he's supporting you in spirit and says you're doing a great job. Mike just likes to hear his name, so it's a good excuse for me to say it. All right. Any other thoughts or changes? Hey, Fran, Don, are you guys there? Don, it looked like you were trying to connect, and I wasn't sure if you were trying to say something or. Don, I don't think we're picking you up at this point. I'm not hearing anything. Nope, still not hearing you, Don. We'll see if I'll see if Jim can come over and either bring you a phone or get you squared away. All right, other questions, comments from you guys? All right, hearing none. Let's look for how do we want to move forward on this? Are you guys ready to proceed? Hello?
Mr. Facilitator.
Yes.
On behalf of the great work done by this committee and seeing that no one else wants to, I would move that this recommendation be moved forward.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Frank. Is there a second to move forward with this? Even though Robert's rule says we don't need to if it's come out of committee. We're just going to engage as many. I'm going to make somebody else talk, by golly. Somebody else is going to have to speak.
I motion to second.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Oh, that's the best. All right. Is everyone comfortable with the recommendation? Any other, it's your last chance, and tweaks, changes, thoughts moving forward on this? Okay. All right, let's walk around the complex and see if we're good with everybody, if, from the chair, vice chair, either verbally or maybe with Don. If we can't hear from you, 2 big thumbs up will be great as well. Hanford, Shelley, are you guys good with this?
Please, yes.
Thank you. Idaho, Terry?
Idaho says yes.
Thank you. Frank, Nevada?
Nevada votes yes.
Awesome. Don, Paducah? Who's in charge there? What in the world's going on? They got nothing coming out of there. Don, oh, thumbs up? Thumbs up, Don? All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jim's supposed to be on his way to fix your audio. All right, so we have Oak Ridge, Shell?
Oak Ridge is yes.
Yes. Portsmouth, Bob?
Yes, please.
Savannah River, Greg?
Yes.
All right, that's everybody. I feel like I skipped someone. So frazzled. It's the end of day 2. What in the world's going on? Hey, well done, guys. 3 recommendations out the door, which is a huge deal at any time, but doing it over Zoom and especially the lengthiness and the time that went into the recommendations for charge 1 and charge 2. I hope you have a sense of accomplishment and realize that what you've done is significant. And I for one am ecstatic and very proud. And I hope you're happy with what you've accomplished today. Before we close out board business, Frank, I know you had something you wanted to share.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Just a quick thing for those who are in attendance. You may or may not be aware that the U.S. Department of Energy and the state of Nevada recently reached a mutually beneficial resolution to all regulatory actions resulting from the July 2019 issue involving certain waste shipments from the Y-12 facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee to the Nevada National Security Site. The final settlement agreement was the result of many months of productive conversations between representatives of the department and the state. The NSSAB shares the department's belief that the final agreement enhances the rigor of DOE's waste management activities for the protection of its workforce, the public, and the environment. Furthermore, results of the Y-12 investigation and corrective action plan, as well as 16 evaluations performed by the DOE Office of Enterprise Assessments, have been shared across the DOE complex to strengthen waste characterization and verification processes. The Nevada Site-Specific Advisory Board wished to bring this item to your attention because, as representatives of communities interested in and impacted by environmental matters at NNSS, we believe this agreement demonstrates the productive working relationship between the Office of Environmental Management and its regulators in Nevada. The board thanks the department and the state for their efforts to reach this mutually beneficial agreement. We look forward to seeing the department and the state continue to collaborate successfully in the future. With that said, my intent is not to extend the day. If there are any questions or clarifications that you'd like, please email me and I'll either answer or have staff reach back. Thank you, Mr. Facilitator.
Hey, thank you, and I appreciate you sharing that. So this is where I sheepishly grin, and I knew I had forgotten someone. Something wasn't right. And Elena, you should have thrown something at me, like I've thrown a pencil. I apologize. Sherilyn, I'm so sorry. So going back.
Yeah, that's no problem. Well, I second it, so I thought that counted. But New Mexico approves, and then Mexico says yes.
See, nothing goes forward without New Mexico's stamp of approval. Everyone knows Manise gets final say on everything. So I appreciate it. I apologize. Thank you. All right. Any other board business we need to look at? All right, let's do this. Let's walk around. We got just a little bit. We actually got quite a bit of time. So let's open up. Is there anything you guys want to talk about? Anything that you heard from any of the presentations that you think would be a good topic for us to take on in the spring or at future board meetings?
Mr. Roberts?
Yeah.
Nevada votes for in-person meetings.
Can I second that? Is that allowed? We will do everything within our power to have you in person in Paducah. And that is, we will see where the line is drawn, but I think that's everyone's preference.
As for the other Nevada representative, I think the Nevada board has expressed that we would rather have it outside in a snowstorm on a roof than do than have another digital meeting.
Paducah in April, that's a legitimate shot, so we'll throw it out. So that's maybe not legitimate, but it's in the realm of possibility.
Who's hosting for the spring chairs meeting?
Spring should be Paducah. It's right across the street.
Okay.
Do we have a date or anything yet?
So the April meeting is scheduled for, let me see if I can find a calendar. It will be the week of April 18th. So if I can give you the sell on Paducah, sometime the first 2 weeks, typically, Dogwood Festival in Paducah, the city really comes alive and really starts to bloom. The last week is Quilt Week, which is a huge deal for this area, and a lot of national and international travel and the big quilt shows. So we'll be out from the chairs meeting before all that's completely moved in, but Paducah is really at its best in that time frame. So we're really excited we were able to finagle a window there.
Hey, Eric, this is Greg.
Hey, Greg.
In terms of the next meeting, I didn't know if people might be interested in discussing or a recommendation regarding a survey like we did at Savannah River.
It's a good idea. Thoughts from you guys on that? Or any other topics you would like to discuss?
Did we get a copy of the Savannah River survey?
Oh, can we get a copy of the Savannah River survey? Greg, did you say that wasn't quite available yet?
It's still being processed. I don't make that decision, of course, but I'm assuming somebody will provide it in some way. Sure. I'll commit for somebody when I have no power to commit. So why not?
Hey,
Greg's
this is
taking an action for Delisa. Yeah. Hey, Amy.
well, this is Amy. So we want to vet it with the DOE folks internally, make sure Mike Budney, our site manager, and others have seen it. And our plan is to actually discuss it with our CAB because it was in response to their recommendation at our upcoming November meeting. So we would certainly share it with this group after that. We think it's going to be of great value. So thank you. And yes, we'll absolutely share it.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Amy. Any other potential topics or discussion areas for the upcoming chairs meetings?
Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, Frank.
This is not a topic, but if I could say thank you to you and staff for an excellent meeting as always. I want to make sure that that is not forgotten.
Well, that's greatly appreciated. And Jordan and her team deserve all the credit. They've done all the work. And I'm just trying to keep her from yelling at me any more than she has to.
No, Eric is our fearless leader always. It's been a pleasure, I assure you.
All right. So what if? So it sounds like we're winding down. Let's go around the complex. Any last comments from any of you? We will finish with Idaho and then with Kelly, and we'll call it a day. How's that sound? So let's start with Shelley and Hanford. Shelley, any final comments from you?
It was a great meeting. I still feel like there's unfinished business that maybe, if there's any way that we as a board can support getting a roadmap that takes a look at all the hurdles that these packets, membership packets go through, that might be of value if people who are part of that chain can see where they are in it. And maybe there is a need for some timeline turnarounds for them. And that might really be a way to visually build a story that's compelling. So I'd sure be willing to help with that, Kelly. And if we could be of service, I'm in. And thank you so much, Eric. You always do such a great job. I learned more about Idaho. That was a lot of fun. So, and thanks to your team. Thanks for all of it. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, Jeff Burright, how are you, buddy?
Doing all right. I just want to say thanks everybody for letting me come play. It was fun to see the conversation at this level.
Hey, it was great to reconnect with you. And please tell Harmony I said hi.
I will. I told her yesterday I was on a meeting with you and she said, no way.
How crazy. What a small world. What
Yeah.
a small world. Yeah. That's awesome. Great to have you and hope to see you again soon. All right, let's look at Nevada. We've got Frank.
Just want to say we had snow on our local peak over the past week, so we're really looking forward to springtime in Paducah. And with that, I'll pass it along. Thank you, Eric.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Anthony, I see you've had your hand up, so I'm going to double dip on you on this one. So if you had something you wanted to share with the hand up, that's great, and then we'll do your final comments.
So I thank you very much. I had the hand up because I wanted to ask that that not only Savannah River shares the survey when they get the chance, but if they could also share their methodologies and how they disseminated the survey and any particular successes that they had in increasing engagement with it. Is that because we did a survey maybe 2 years ago, and that was one of our largest hurdles was trying to get individuals to engage with it. Other than that, thank you for having me in on this meeting. It was great to see once again how things are going this level, and I look forward to our next meeting and being able to escape the snow of Nevada to beautiful tropical Paducah.
Tropical Paducah. I love it. I love it. All right, let's slide. You know what? I've decided this time I am not going to blow past northern New Mexico. And I'm so sorry for that. Sherilyn, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and all that your input. I've learned quite a bit within these past 2 days. So Elena and I are on day 7 of being chairs and vice chairs. So we feel like we still have a lot to learn. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bob, for sitting in and providing us feedback and helping us during this. We look forward to seeing everybody in person, hopefully in Paducah. Anything you want to add, Elena?
We're expecting our first snow probably this weekend, and we hope to see you all in the fall here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But thank you all so much. Yeah, this is day 7 for us.
If you just told us, we would have totally hazed you for the last 2 days. You kept that secret.
That's right. We did.
You guys did great. First chairs meeting's always tough, but being chairs for just with a week under your belt is, and you guys, you did so well. You did so well.
Thank you.
Couldn't be better. Got rid of
We're
that.
grateful to Bob. Thank you so much.
No, you blew Bob out of the water. So, I'm just kidding. I love Bob. Love Bob Hall. All right. Hey, thanks, guys. All right, let's slide over. Oak Ridge, Shell.
Thank you, Eric, as always, and thank you to the rest of our chairs and other members that were here in representation. I too can't wait till we're back in person. This virtual stuff is for the birds. Can't stand it. So appreciate everyone's time. Thanks.
Thanks, Shell. Hey, Leon, did you happen to jump on by chance?
I did. Very informative couple of days. Thank you so much. Learned a lot, and thanks for letting us participate.
Hey, thanks for being with us, buddy. All right, we have Greg down in Savannah River.
All righty, thanks. Real quick, I'll just give a teaser for Anthony's question. They actually engaged a professional survey company, a pretty well respected one, to draw what amounts to a representative sample. So they went out and collected all the responses and administered the survey. And that was actually part of the recommendation that it be done scientifically in a way that was recognized as being scientific. So that was the answer on that one. Certainly glad to share anything else we can with you. Otherwise, thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody. There's almost too many people to thank for all this. We appreciate it. Thanks for a great meeting. I do want to thank my fellow chairs. I appreciate all the discussion and thoughtful comments and such. And I don't want to miss out on thanking my local SRS CAB people, James and Delisa and Amy, for all the support they give and the information they provide and keeping me going in the right direction, at least most of the time. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, tough to beat that team at Savannah River. You guys are fortunate. Hey, Greg, thanks for your help on the recommendations too. All right, let's go to Portsmouth. Bob?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This was an excellent meeting, and I really enjoyed both days. Really not much for virtual meetings, but this was just excellent. I'd like to congratulate everyone, and there seems to be just a lot of continuity right now between the memberships. And, perhaps we could branch out, reach out beyond just the 8 sites, maybe SSAB, maybe in France, Italy, Spain, someplace new we could have a meeting at. How's that sound?
We'll look into that.
Okay.
Travelocity, and we'll see what they can do.
Thank you.
See, you got to slide to the side, Bob. You're hidden. We don't get to see that smile.
Well, Carlton needs to come in. They don't want to see my face. Do they really want to see my face? No.
Who does? Carlton, how are you, buddy?
I'm fine, Eric. Very good meeting. Like Bob said, we're on so many of these Zoom meetings that after a while you just get fed up with them. But this one here, especially today, coming through the charges and making everything work, I think it was just really productive. It was good to see everybody again, hear all of this wisdom and knowledge that we have on these national chairs. It's fantastic. Good time, Eric.
Hey, thanks, Carlton.
You see, sir, I have a face for radio. That's why I slide to the side there.
Bob, you're the best. Hey, let's check in with Paducah. Don, Fran? Any audio out of you guys yet? Well, Don and Fran, I'm sure want to tell you it was a great meeting, that it was the highlight of their week, that they can't wait to invite you to Paducah in the spring. And that, so I apologize that we're not getting any, I'm not even sure if they're still on. Looks like they're on, but we're not having the audio. All right. To our loving host site, Idaho, friends and family, Terry.
Hey, thank you all for Zooming and joining us in beautiful Idaho. Thank you, Eric, for all the highlights and stuff that you have given about our state, the shout outs. We appreciate it. Thank you to all of the other cab chairs and vice chairs. It's been a very interesting couple of days. I think we've accomplished a lot of teamwork going on there. And in closing, I wanted to give a shout out to Jordan and her team. I think it's really run smoothly, and thank you all for coming to Idaho. Josh, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say I was blown away by the recommendations today, reviewing them and reading them. They were just very well put together. It's really nice to be at this caliber and at this level to discuss these issues. Even though we're on Zoom, I've got ADD and you kept my attention for all 4 hours. So that's a positive in my book. I appreciate it. And there was more than one time that I listened to Frank talk and I thought it was like a professionally, highly produced voiceover, because he sounds so professional when he's going about it. So I appreciate everybody, and I can't wait for the next meeting. So thank you.
You know, Josh kind of hit on something, that a lot of times in these Zoom meetings, it's easy to be to just be a viewer and not be a participant. And I'm so thankful for the last 2 days. So many of you actively participated in the meeting. The discussion was really outstanding, and the dialogue, and it's always good when we're in person, but when we've done a couple of these online, it hasn't felt the same. This one felt different. Maybe the best virtual meeting I've taken part of in any venue, when you look at the level of discussion and the multiple people getting involved, and I'm very thankful for that. Hey, before we hand it to Kelly, Jordan, where are you, Jordan? Pop up on screen.
Here I am.
Ma'am, thank you. We're gonna let you, any words from you?
Yes, thank you so very much for all of your support. I couldn't have done it without my team. Of course, we worked a lot with you, Eric, but Kelly Green, Travis Modal, Aaron James, and of course, our lovely Haley Price, who ran things on the back end. This was a big team effort, and we're just glad to be here and to support you all for this meeting. We thought it went well, and we were glad to do it. So thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Hey, Travis had a title for this. What was his job title for the?
Oh, Travis Modal was our official muter booter. He was in charge. Yes, he was in charge of muting you all, and if anyone got a little rowdy, he was supposed to get you out of here. So we didn't have any of that, thankfully.
I never had to do that.
Yes.
I just wanted booter in the
record. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to be able to search that and find it.
Thank you.
That's awesome. All right, Kelly, take us home, kiddo.
Before I say my final words, I'm going to see if anybody else from headquarters would like to say something. I think we still have a handful of people who have been observing and participating.
Hi, Kelly. It's Jocelyn. I'd like to just echo what everybody has been saying about just how much we appreciate you taking the time to participate today virtually. I know we all do get tired of virtual meetings, but we, just like you, are looking forward to hopefully getting together in person once again. I'd really like to just thank everybody who put this meeting on, and a big shout out to the headquarters advisory board team, to Kelly, Michelle, and Alyssa, because they do just so much work. One other shout out before we call it a day. And I know this person likes to keep things private, but there is no way that we can let him escape the EM or the departmental headquarters, if you will, without just letting you all know that Mark Gilbertson is, after so many years of federal service, is going to be retiring at the end of the month. So while we are so sad to see him leave, we are excited for him and his next adventure. And I know that the advisory boards mean a lot to him. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to make sure that you were all aware and to share that news. But again, I know he likes to keep things private, but we are so appreciative of his so many federal years of service. So a big thank you to Mark.
So I just like to thank you guys for your service. So what you do is really important to the department, and I think the quality of the work that you performed over the last couple of days has been just really outstanding. So thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll try and wrap us up. First, I want to tell you all, I am so proud of how much you accomplished during this meeting. Like everybody else has mentioned, virtual meetings are hard, and I agree with Eric. This is one of the best virtual meetings, if not the best, that I've ever participated in terms of dialogue and progress and continuing to be able to do your mission in this pandemic. So you guys deserve a huge round of applause for that. Thank you, Idaho, for stepping up and offering to host this meeting. If y'all remember, they were the last site that hosted an in-person meeting. And when I called out for a volunteer, they were brave and they were a team player and raised their hand and said, we will do it. And that is just, it meant so much. And I want everybody to know that Idaho deserves a lot of respect for volunteering to do this. They did a fabulous job. Eric, you did a wonderful job facilitating. I know more about Idaho than I ever thought I would. I don't know if it was any useful facts, but I do know a lot. And I want to tell the members, I'm so proud of how well you guys did on those charges. When I brought those to the board last October, it was a different change of pace. We hadn't had charges like that in the past. They were a heavy lift, and you guys were up for the challenge, and I just so appreciate all of the time and the effort that you put into that. And I hope by seeing where this has gone over the last year that you feel proud of the work that you did, because I think you should be proud. It's very impressive, and I want you to know that those recommendations will go throughout the EM office, and we will learn from your recommendations and hopefully make improvements to make us even bigger and better than we already are. So thank you all.
Hey guys, thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to participate.
Oh.
And yeah, go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I had notes here and I should have been reading them. I tried to wing it. Alyssa and Michelle, my team, thank you so much for everything that you did to get this chairs meeting ready and everything that you do on a daily basis. These ladies are working so hard for all of the boards and do so much to keep the boards running and to make sure your needs are being met. And so they deserve a huge thank you. And I'm so sorry that I did not read my notes and tried to wing it.
Fantastic, Kelly. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for participating. And you guys did great. Look forward to seeing you all in person in the spring. And maybe we can find a reason to get together between now and then. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.
You too.